Well, Caelin, welcome to the Real Driving Man podcast.
Do you drive?
I do drive.
Are you a real?
I am a real. I'm a real dude. You should have seen my last podcast I had with a comedian, Jacob Humphreys. Dude, he got me so high on dabs, I couldn't stop talking. I had to apologize to him.
Well, dear audience, unfortunately, this jackass is back. And
I felt so bad. I had to be like, hey, man, dude, I'm so sorry that I didn't shut the fuck up. I was good for the first 45 minutes. I was like asking questions, but then I was so high and couldn't stop talking. 12 dabs is too many dabs for a thing. We have also Portugal the dog here. He is Grayson Schramm's dog, who I'm watching for the weekend. How you been?
Coming off the tail end of a cold.
Well, that's always fun.
Yeah. Brain frog. That's what I got out of it. I got Bane frog. Not brain fog. Took me 3 attempts to buy tissues.
Really?
I went to Walmart 3 times.
Why did you fail?
I went in the first time, and I got chicken and bread and NyQuil. No tissues.
You just forgot?
I just forgot. And then I got home, and I was like, all right, I got this. And I started sneezing, and I was like, man, I could use some tissues. The ones that I specifically went to Walmart like 40 minutes ago to buy. So I went up and I went to Walmart again, and this time I got some antihistamines and a new cup and no tissues.
Do you got stuff in that cup right there?
This one right here?
Please move it from the cord, just because it's giving me spill anxiety.
Oh, you're good. It's tea. I think it's vanilla spice.
Vanilla spice is nice. Spice is nice. If I'm looking over this way, it's because I have to monitor the audio as well. So that's why I'm sometimes looking this way to just make sure our mics are. This is why you need another audio guy.
Let me just.
Yeah, it seems like it's working. We got things working for so far. Yeah. Anyway, you lent me this book, The Unfettered Mind by Takon Soho. I read it. It was enjoyable, but like I was saying to you earlier, like with the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi, it's amazing. It has a bunch of good lessons. It can be, I don't know what the right adjective is, but it's very Japanese in its writing, and so the translation just comes off in a way that can be hard to digest in a permanent manner as a Western reader.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a great book. Like, one of the things I loved he talked about in the mind was, and it was in a very, you could tell, very Buddhist guy, very Buddhist perspective.
It's literally a Zen monk, a Buddhist Zen monk, writing letters to samurai.
Exactly.
It's literally that. That's the preface of the. So go on.
And one of the things I loved, he talked about not letting your mind get stuck.
Yes, the abiding place.
The abiding place. That was.
Tell you what, I listened to this in Audible.
Because what was the three books in this were, and he talked about it in the main book.
It's like The Sound of Clear Jewels.
The mysterious record of immovable wisdom, which just sounds like a fan's.
That sounds like something.
Some fan fiction, like some porno fan fictions from some anime or something, doesn't it? The mysterious record of immovable wisdom.
That sounds like the most. That sounds like one of the most weeby things I have ever heard, and it also sounds really cool, so you know I'm a weeb.
Yeah, the abiding place is where the mind stops. And I really liked that as a analogy between open and closed loop brain circuits. I can't remember which one is which. Open is when you are like learning something. I may have them removed, but one of them is when you're learning something and you're having, like, if you're learning to punch, you're thinking about twisting your arm, moving it forward.
Yes, you start out, and you have, the way that he describes it is, you start out with no mind because you don't know what you're doing. This could be, like, I've described this to my instructor at jiu-jitsu, and I also describe it for driving. Like, you start out and you don't know what you're doing, so you're just like pushing pedals, turning the steering wheel, moving a stick. Jiu-jitsu, it's like you're moving your hips and your arms and your hands and your arms and your legs and your eyes and your head and your ears. Like, you're not thinking about anything. So you have no mind. You just react. Then you start learning stuff and you start thinking and you start overthinking. And he's like, that's important. You got to overthink. Make sure you overthink things.
Well, your mind gets stuck. He talks about how your mind will get stuck in one place and it won't move, kind of like water. And I only read this once, and it was like a quick read. I read it in like one sitting, so I'd probably have to go back and reread it to really...
I genuinely think it's more easy to digest when it's read to you out loud.
I could see that. It's...
Because there's some books that are like that.
It really, especially in complex books, whenever I read a book like this, I know I'm not going to pick up everything. And so if you try to read too into it, you're either going to exhaust yourself and not get through it because you're just trying to take up too much, or you're just going to be overloaded and you're not going to remember anything. So when I read books like this, I try to say, okay, read it, but pick out what resonates with you. And what really did was the mind that, the abiding place.
Yes.
Keeping your mind able to flow, especially in combat or in anything, not getting stuck. And I think a lot of things can get your mind stuck.
Yeah.
Anger, so many things. It's a very Buddhist idea, no attachments. Let your mind flow freely, and then your blade will become your opponent's. I can't remember his opponent's blade will become your blade.
Yeah, your opponent is already dead. You are dead. Nothing exists. Sort of Zen nonsense.
It's not nonsense. I love it as a fan of Japanese reader, especially if you ever read one of these books. I think one of the reasons they're so profound is because they're so culturally tied to the time they were written.
Yes, it's kind of similar to. Piss off everyone right from the start. It's kind of similar to how a lot of biblical stuff doesn't resonate with modern audiences because they're like, fish and bread, what?
Yeah.
Like,
also 95% of my audience is bots, so
oh.
I found out that of the 1,300 downloads of my podcast that have existed all since I started doing it 3 years ago, 95% of them are likely bots. I was like, that's great. That makes me happy. That makes me...
I feel things, and they are not good things.
I've just joked about it. I have been trying to make this podcast better. You're fun because you're just a fun, easy person to talk to.
I say things without thinking about them.
Dude, that's the whole thing of this podcast. And I think you just do that until you figure out how to, host people. Like I said, I'm never getting that high again. And trying to... make conversations people want to listen to is hard, especially in podcasts, as they're so prevalent now, and there's so many people who are so good at it. I was talking to someone on a date, and she had a podcast for a little bit and just stopped because she's like, no one's listening. Yeah. And that's why so many people stop, because it is. If you ever look, I was like, oh, I got 1,300 downloads. And you scroll down, you're like, oh, most of them are bots. Makes you want to quit. But I think that's when you just got to, maybe it's a wing and a prayer, but go after conversations and keep having them. Learn how to talk. I think so many people want things to be perfect when they start, as everyone does.
Yeah. It's so easy.
Were it so easy. No.
I use that phrase a lot, unironically.
Were it so easy. Sorry.
Dude, you should have heard. At the peak of this cold, my voice dropped. I sounded like I had been huffing argon.
I've been trying to do a Morgan Freeman impression.
I don't think you can do it.
I don't have a very good one. I have a joke about it where I don't want to spoil the joke, but it's basically like I made a AI in the voice of Morgan Freeman to make arguments with my girlfriend. It's a stupid joke, and then she leaves me for an old black man. I guess I solved too many of my problems, and that's the best I got. It's not that good.
See, I think the problem is Morgan Freeman has a very warm voice, right? You have a very passionate voice. If Morgan Freeman's voice is a warm chocolates like on a sundae, right? Like you've got warm fudge melting down like a sundae. Your voice is like a good. You ever had like a McDonald's Sprite on a really blow off hot day? It's kind of like that.
He's calling me Sprite.
You are entirely different entities. And I love you for it, bro. But you're not Morgan Freeman.
Oh, no. And someone said, for the bit, I try it because it's always a fun. I think the audience respects you when you try like something you're not good at. You know it.
I don't have the balls to do that at all.
I listened to a YouTube video because I just Googled, impressions. Sometimes there's really good tips, especially for accents. Yeah. And Morgan Freeman was up on one, and he told people to yawn a lot because if you yawn, it relaxes your voice, and that makes it sound better. Mm-hmm. Exactly what you said. I have a much, especially as I start to talk faster, I have more passion in my voice, have that like energy. Yeah. When he has a really slow, relaxed way of talking, and it does sound better.
Yeah.
But
you got to use the word son a bit, like listen, son.
Listen, son. Yeah, I don't know. You gotta be willing to look like an idiot for a lot of things. I mean, that's what the unfettered mind is to be able to. Maybe that's one of the things that, like I said, I took from the book is this moving mind because it can apply to so many things. Yeah. When people are trying something new, a lot of times they get their mind stuck in the place of trying to be perfect, and it doesn't allow them to make mistakes and flow into an area that is better.
That's actually one of the things that I really appreciated about that book, actually, is when I was listening to it. The first time I listened to it, I had a weird system going on. This is back in college. We've got this chair in my backyard. It's like old wood chair, heavy as balls. And I would drag it into the middle of the backyard at the hottest point in the day. And I'd put in my earbuds and I'd be sitting there in just like my underwear, essentially. And I just bake in direct sunlight and listen to this book for an hour at a time.
Just talk like the unfettered mind?
Yes. Just close my eyes and just try and listen to it. And one of the things that really struck me is how they were like the author, Soho. Would his last name be Soho? Did they westernize? Anyways, the author.
I think his last name would be Soho.
Soho-san.
Yes. Here I'm gonna look that up. You keep talking.
Anyways, what I would do is I would sit there and I'd just listen to it. And he talks about how you can't like let your mind get stuck on things, but don't force it out. Just let it come out of that stuck place.
Oh yeah, there is a radish named after him.
That is one of the most out-of-pocket things I've heard you say in a hot minute. But yeah, just because a lot of martial arts is you start out, you're not thinking, you're just reacting.
The surname is Taquan. So his name would be Taquan-san.
So Taquan-san.
Yeah, that was... Yeah.
Taquan-san. Taquan-san.
Yeah, you probably even wouldn't use sensei.
T-san.
He lived to 71, dude. That's
an old dude, especially in like feudal Japan. Anyways, I just wanted to make the point that it was very interesting to hear him be like, yeah, you part of the entire process is that you have to get to that point where you're overthinking things. You need to get there. And then like it's kind of like a bell curve, but more squished.
It's trimming. It's what this podcast is. It's like that's the shit. Like I said, people I had some friends who were like, oh, I had my first podcast anniversary. I think this one's was 3 years, a couple years ago. But I had so many episodes I just got rid of because you have to practice talking.
Yeah.
And you have to allow yourself to go into these places to figure out, to make the mistakes, to find out what doesn't work. And you really have to get out of the mindset of a goal, like an end state, because that's where your mind will stop. You have to have, why do I want to do this podcast? Of course, we all want to have listeners, want to make money doing it, just have fun conversations.
Yeah.
But I used to compare myself because, I'm obviously a big Rogan fan, and I wanted to be like Joe Rogan. And, I mean, there's a lot of
42 million views in 45 minutes.
Yeah, and also I think it gets you stuck into that type of person's, like, how they're doing their podcast. And the success they had is... it just squishes you because you see how far back you are and how hard it is to actually get someplace. And with a podcast, you have to, if you're like me and you're already a disagreeable person, you're going to have a lot of episodes people don't like to hear.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to, hone that edge of yours. You don't want it to be too unnecessarily sharp in the wrong places, but at the same time you have to keep that part of yourself if that's who you are.
You want it to be a sharp sword in a sheath.
Exactly. And you have to figure out how, like, it takes a lot of time, effort to sharpen those. And a lot of it is just, I was just told quantity, just put out stuff. When I didn't have something to do, I'll start talking. And one of the things I learned is a lot of podcast episodes I record and then I just don't release. Especially my solo ones. I used to release all of them, and now if there's one, now I'll do some I'll release, but some of them, it's just to practice.
You just talk, and you get Jordan Peterson in his end of 2024 incarnation is a very different Jordan Peterson from the guy I saw back in like 2016, 2017 on YouTube.
Okay.
Man's gone through some stuff. Whether or not you agree with him, man's gone through some stuff. But I always remember him explaining very succinctly that a lot of people, like, he says, thinking is really hard. And I was like, fucking, what is wrong with this moron? And then he goes on to explain, true thinking is hard. Most people half think or quarter think. And the rest of it, they're saying words to try and refine out what they think. Like, you've got 101 connections, and only 10 of them are truly relevant. And only 5 of those are what's driving your thought. So that's like 96 connections that you need to figure out which ones you cut from this thought and which ones.
And none of those are likely original. That's one thing Jordan Peterson said, talking about Nietzsche. When he read Nietzsche, every idea of his was just revolutionary. And that's why I asked you about the sacred and the profane. Because he said something it was kind of a throwaway line. It wasn't one of the profound things he said that you hear him say all the time.
He says a lot of profound, deep things.
Yes. This was just kind of a throwaway line where he said that most things he reads nowadays, he's already read, or a version of it. It's not a truly new idea. And that was different with Nietzsche, reading Nietzsche. Is that how you say it? Nietzsche? Something
Nietzsche? He's Russian, right?
I think he's German.
Nietzsche.
Probably. Anyway, and he mentioned the sacred and the profane after that in some context, which is why I wanted to read it. And in the same way, I thought, I'm a big fan of a lot of these intellectual dark web type figures, obviously. And I was like, how many of my ideas are just rehashes of theirs? And I was like, most. Which is not bad, like, especially when you're starting out, you do take a lot of ideas from people who you admire and have more life experience, are smarter than you.
And original is not the same as good.
Well, that's where I was going, because most new ideas are bad. Like, not bad in a, like, bad, just they're not a, bad's probably the wrong word. Not, most new ideas are not good in the sense of not, like, morally good, just.
They're unhelpful.
Exactly.
you may invent some incredibly original way to, like, you may invent a completely original mousetrap. Current mousetrap's still probably better though.
Exactly.
Like, that's the whole thing behind, like, build a better mousetrap. It's really hard because the current one is just really good.
And
or relevance is another one too. Like, is your
exactly, you're hitting all the points. It's really hard to, with logistics of constructing a new object, you have to take that into account, and it's why I think sometimes some truly creative people, who I envy in so many ways because I'm creative but not crazily so.
Yeah.
I think they get stuck in some of that's where sometimes when people who aren't as creative, they kind of, you know, what has worked in the past. Sometimes that's a lot of times that's the way to go. But if you are going to generate new original ideas, you have to talk a lot. You have to try to generate to create a lot of shit to find out what does work. And it's a long process, and in that process you go through like, oh, who am I? What do I think?
Yeah.
And that's always not fun. Sometimes you just want a fucking hit podcast and
like
people to tell you you're awesome all the time.
Everyone, what does Chris Williamson say? Everyone wants what you have. They don't want the experience of how you got it. Something like that. That dude's brilliantly articulate.
He is. He became one of my favorite. Like, he's the newest in my podcast rotation. Is the podcast I listen to, and he's great. The way he is able to condense new ideas into stuff that's digestible.
Yeah, especially for people like me who, I'm not the dumbest man in the room, but I'm certainly never the smartest man in the room. I just am far more willing than most people to make an ass out of myself.
Yeah. And then there's also, I think there's smart, and then there's, how does that come to the real world? I think being smart, and as a person who does like to consider themselves smart and is envious of people who are smarter than me, you got to make best do with what you got, and you want to definitely be smart. But how are you also applying that? Some of the smartest people in the world, I think, sometimes struggle to figure out how to integrate how smart they are with everything else.
Yeah.
Or you get, I mean, and also the smarter you are, the more Jordan Peterson talks about this idea, which I love. I mean, it's not his, is the idea of Lucifer. God's fallen angel was his best angel.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea of the Luciferian intellect comes from.
My roommate and I were actually talking about this, which is, like, we were going back and forth about a whole bunch of Christianity stuff because, you know, I like to say I'm not a Christian, but I was sent by God to test one's patience. Or no, I was sent by God to test the patience of one, was what I said.
That's a good line.
Yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's one of the few things that I can be like, that is all 100% me.
Yeah.
But
until you find out someone smarter said it.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure someone smarter said that. I'll bet there's hundreds of examples of someone who said this before I was even born. Anyways, we were going back and forth, and I just thought, like, if we accept biblical canon as the true frame for this conversation, like, the only thing, like, God at the top, if you remove literally the almighty God from the equation, the second highest being in wisdom, authority, power, like everything, is Lucifer. And he's God's literal right-hand man. And how would it feel to lose something of that level?
Oh, and that's what Morgoth was in...
Yeah, in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And it's gotta hurt. And I love how this is a thing across almost every mythology. It's like, there is an ultimate good being, or an ultimately, at least, benevolent being towards humanity. and then like their second in command, their Lancer, just absolutely screws the pooch.
I mean, it's supposed to be a story. I think it's beautiful because it's true. And like I said, I'm a person where if you put me in a group of the smartest people in the room, I can function, but I mainly get by being the dumbest person in the room and asking the stupid questions.
Yeah.
And in those rooms, I think sometimes when you have that level of intellect, which is just exponential, it's very easy to inflate your ego with that.
Yeah. There's a reason why pride in almost every religion is the progenitor of all their sins, so to speak.
It's why, and I know we've talked about this before.
Very Catholic idea, by the way.
But I also didn't release our last 2 episodes, I think, because they were audio issues. I was just getting this stuff set up, and for some reason, like one of our mics cut out halfway through.
Yeah.
I had to get. I don't know. You saw these new. I got to get new cords. But
I just cause audio issues where I go.
No, it was all me. It was all me. I wasn't.
Oh, were these the ones with me, or just like
there was one with you and then one with someone else who is another comic named Bruno, who I'm mad I lost that one.
Absolutely, someone with far better.
Well, he's from Australia, and it was a great. I wish I could release it, but it just the audio. You got to work out the kinks. And I'm still new to this.
Can we take a few moments to appreciate just like Australian accent's really nice?
Yeah, Bruno was great. We had I wish I got that podcast. I wish I did. Anyway, see, this is my mind's getting stuck in place. I got to let it flow.
Yeah.
What were we talking about Lucifer.
Yeah, just like the betrayal, the sadness,
Oh yeah, I know what I was going to go to. And we talked about the Weinstein brothers before. Brett, I always introduce people to Brett because he's just less disagreeable than his older brother, and so he's pretty easier to digest, but both him and his brother are just levels of brilliant, which is crazy. Yeah. And Eric is one who doesn't have a podcast, so I don't listen to him as much, but I think last week he was just on. I saw him. I mean, he wasn't on a new podcast, but it was one that had been recorded just a couple months ago that I hadn't seen. Yeah. I just listened to him for 3 hours. He is probably, of anyone in the IDW, one of the only ones I will drop everything to listen to and try to understand what he's saying, because he is, I think, a polymath in the truest of sense.
Something Messiah, Dune connections, something.
But not even that. One of the reasons I do like listening to him is because and I did an episode I'm going to release on it. He talks about how wanting to get people out of the solar system and off to planets, and it's often a problem that is portrayed in it's impossible because physically it seems so. But I really liked the way he framed it, and it was one of the things where of a lot of the critiques of him, because he's just a disagreeable guy, I think it's thrown at him. But this was one I really, really liked because to me it was a loving of life. I think while it's impossible, we do have to get off this planet, and we have to get out of this solar system. And a lot of people are like, where will we go?
Luna? Mars?
Well, you forget the solar system. Those say, because he's talking about physics and using maybe new areas of high-level physics to get even out of the solar system by maybe figuring out jumps in laws of physics or cheat codes that allow us to do that.
Smash cut to like some version of Slip Space, and all the Halo fans are like, I freaking knew it.
Well, and he even says like wormholes are for pussies. He was joking about it because he believes there's ways off this planet other than the current main line of physics, and I don't know enough about the current state of modern physics to comment too much on that. But what I loved was his, don't you want to leave? Forget about our solar system. Look at the number of exoplanets. Go out and see the stars. As a person who's seen the stars since I was a kid, people are like, where would we go? I'm like, go see the stars. You see so many up there, you're like, if a fraction of a percent of these even have livable life, there's billions of adventures out there. Billions.
Yeah. The problem we encounter is, I don't even remember, Fermi paradox, right? That's the word for it? Yeah. Is the whole Fermi paradox. To me, that's not the issue here. to me, the issue is to go back to the unfettered mind. We need to go through the fuck up stage of trying to get out there, and we haven't gone through that yet.
Well, I don't think there's stages. Like there's going to be a fuck up stage. I think it's a progress of you're going to go through these stages. And my bigger point in this episode I'm going to release, it's pretty short. It's just me talking about it, was like I have a niece coming in I guess next month. And it was, you know, and these a lot of words are from Eric, just to say I'm not coming up with these on my own.
Yeah, no.
No new ideas, like I said. He said we went from 1904 when the Wright brothers started. 60 years later, maybe, we're on the moon. Mm-hmm. The fact that we can't do big jumps in a short amount of time is totally possible. And the idea, like, say even if it's impossible, I don't care. I want to have that idea that I want to go out and have those adventures, go see the stars like we saw in all our favorite sci-fi movies. Yeah, it's going to look different, and how it looks will be constrained by certain laws of physics, but I think that imaginative insight is what's missing, and that doesn't have to be based in any form of hard intelligence, but just that desire, I think, is important to cultivate. Because, like Eric said, what are we going to do? Just I love edibles, but are we going to just take edibles and watch movies and just that's all we're going to do? We never want to go beyond and see what's out there, have adventures, have babies, make music, make art, make amazing things, make fuck-ups, and have those adventures?
When I was in college, I needed to take a...
You were in college for like a semester, right?
I was in college for 2 years, dude.
You were?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's why it's impressive that I've screwed it up so much. No, that's a whole other story. But one of my favorite classes that I really hesitated to take at the time was public speaking, of all things. I didn't like public speaking. I still get kind of uncomfortable doing it. And the end project of, the public speaking class was literally you have to do a presentation and give a public speech. And I was like, well, fuck me. And I asked the teacher, like, do we have any prompts or anything? And she's like, no, literally just give one. And at the time, I was really, really deep in the weeds in Destiny lore. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if God, Gandhi, the flying spaghetti monster, what have you. The muses struck me. And I came in a couple weeks later and I gave the single best speech I've ever given.
That's awesome.
I wish that I could recreate it because it was so good that my teacher signed me up without my permission for the speech contest. She was like, you're going, just shut up and go. Lo and behold, I screwed that one up because I forgot everything I learned in that class immediately. But my speech was literally just about like, we've got this whole for me paradox where it's like, where's all the alien life? We got all this time and stuff. My take is, what if we are the first generation of Starwalkers, right?
I mean, quite possibly. I think,
like,
while this question gets wrapped up with go on. No.
So if we're the first generation, I don't want to show up to potential alien life and just like they go, oh god damn it, like I don't want it to be Independence Day or Independence Day adjacent, and I'd prefer to avoid the Prometheus movies as well. I want to show up like the Traveler in Destiny and just be like, ayo, humanity just showed up. And things just get objectively better for everyone.
I mean, that's a big leap, though.
But I want to introduce that concept as well to, like...
Oh, I see
Like,
this idea of, oh, we can do awesome things.
yeah, like Halo's got the mantle of responsibility, right? You remember that.
Oh yeah.
What if we assign ourselves a mantle of, if we show up, to some degree, we should be like, all right, let's do something cool.
I think
Not for worship or anything, but just because, like, hey, it's a moral thing to do to lift others up.
we're also, and this is to also, like I said, listening to Eric, because he, as much as people don't like him, because I actually tried to listen to a video of a debunk of him and his brother, and they weren't, it wasn't, here are their ideas and let me critique their ideas because I disagree with their ideas. It was, let me go after them as people and character assassins them, which gives me just, I'm like, okay, you just don't like these people. And
Just because you don't like someone doesn't mean that everything they say is wrong.
and even some of their critiques were obviously valid, but the way they did a very bad job of separating, here's my critiques, here's the person. So immediately I'm like, you seem like someone who's trying to smear their character rather than give an actual critique of what they actually believe. And so I'm cautious of those, but one of the things I think that Eric makes people feel uncomfortable, because unlike his brother, Brett is just as smart as his brother, but Brett doesn't make you feel that way.
Yeah.
Eric, and he doesn't make you feel dumb, but he's just this obviously disagreeable, so he's going to not be as go along to get along. And just through his talking and his knowledge of everything, it's not just, he's not this academia high tower, because he hasn't been in academia in 20 years. He left. He does capital venture stuff and just researches on his own. And one of the things I do like about him is one of the reasons I left academia is that he does try to call people out and he says what he believes. And even if he's wrong, that makes me, you have some character.
Yeah.
And he stands up for a lot of people, especially in high-level physics, who were not taken seriously by the mainstream physicists who tend to be very stuck with string theory. And he seems consistent along the board. And an idea he articulates is, we don't have much time. With the advent of AI, it's going to destroy capitalism in a way that seems inevitable. And I don't know that we're going to be able to leave this planet for much longer. And one of the reasons I think we do need to leave is because this happened a bit it was in the Dune novels, especially in God Emperor, where people literally left to just avoid tyranny.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the ways that makes it a lot difficult. It doesn't make it impossible for tyranny to take hold. But
what I've noticed is that see, you have a big thing against kings. I call kings a necessary evil, because this is the kind of thing that you need kings for, which is just, you need a point of authority for however long to get shit done. And the way the human mind works is it's easiest to put a face in a position of power and and outsource all of your thinking and problems to them. And I listened to an interview with Ben Shapiro recently. Love him or hate him, or like me, have no particularly strong feelings on him. He said something that I thought was fairly obvious, which is most people just want to be left alone. They just want to deal with their lives. Yes, we can worry about the high problems of whatever stage of capitalism, whatever stage of socialism, communism, whatever, like the economy going one way, economic decline of America versus whatever, the deconstruction of of masculine ideals and whatnot. Most people are bothered by it. That doesn't change the fact that they need to pay rent. They've got a cell phone bill to pay. Guys in our position, like, you can have all the high-minded, high-complex problems you want. That doesn't change the fact that you'd like a girlfriend. Doesn't change the fact that when you screw up and overcook the rice, you got to spend another 15 minutes scraping rice out of the cooker. Like, life presents the practical problems of existing as a person. And most people have their hands full with that because they're not Eric or Brett.
Yeah.
And so those people literally do not have the resources to involve themselves with these problems to the degree that we ask them to.
I think that's a fair point. You know, these are bigger problems that, yeah, most people are just trying to live their fucking lives. They're trying to just go day by day.
Or
and
week by week or month by month.
And at the same time, I agree with that. You have to be able to just go along your life and not get too absorbed in these problems. And at a certain point, I think we all are responsible for this world we've created to some degree, some more than others. And that if we want it to continue, we should have we should adopt that we should take on that responsibility in a serious way. And it doesn't have to be like I even talked about this in that episode I released, is I'm not a physicist. I'm not going to solve these problems. But one of the reasons I wanted to do the episode was to get out that idea of I want humanity to continue. I want people to continue to have babies. I love humans. I love humanity. I want that to continue. And I think having that mentality is important to be able to empower. Like, I just didn't like that so many times when I would want to say in like high school and go out and see the stars. You can't do that. You can't do that. And, you know, they're coming from people with, you know, talking from a legitimate scientific basis.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, even when I got into high levels of academia, it was just like, yeah, we just got to stay on the planet. Like, you know, no one even has the desire. And I think a huge part of it is no one sees the night sky anymore. When you see out there and see how small we are, it makes, it's good for you. You feel small in a good, healthy way. And I don't know, maybe I just have that adventurous, maybe it's my passion. Like you said, I'm a very passionate person.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people need to, you know, invest in these ideas in any way, but maybe, and this is kind of going back to Jordan Peterson's the group he's founded, the ARC, Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, is having a positive vision for the future.
Yeah.
Is what I was talking about. And one of the things that I loved about Eric is that he inspired like that kid-like wonder, like, whoa, my God, this excitement. So even regardless if you disagree with his ideas or anything about that was one thing I thought was really beautiful, was this love of humanity, this wanting for us to continue, of music and art and all the amazing parts. And, you know, it's a very critical time. We have a very stressful election coming up here.
There's an election going on?
What? No. What? Huh? Did we know about that? No. I'm ready for it to be over, no matter which way it goes.
I'm still tired from the last election, and you're telling me I've got to do another one?
And you said something interesting. Most people, like you said, they have their families.
Yeah.
And I agree. I understand that. I come from a pretty normal background like you.
I think this, just to interrupt slightly.
No, go ahead. I talk too much anyway.
I think this is not necessarily a problem, but a stumbling block for people. It's Brett who's the disagreeable one, right? I'm sorry, I still have brain fog. Eric. I think
Eric is a mathematician.
Brett
is a biologist.
Eric has a very particular kind of compassion for humanity, which is, I think, demonstrated in that he sees what we can become. He sees in my understanding, he has an understanding that humanity as a whole could walk amongst the stars as benevolent demigods.
Well, let's say benevolent beings instead of demigods, because that adds connotations.
Pseudo-gods, like powerful creatures with a drive and want to do good. And he's very frustrated that we aren't there. Like, he sees what we can become, and
that's a very good analysis.
And he's frustrated, saddened, and angered by the fact that we're here doing everything that we are doing right now. And what he misses from taking that high view is that the balance of that is that we are also incomparably capable of doing immensely unnecessary things. Like, to him, humanity can be unbelievably efficient. Mathematics is beautiful, right? In that it's got efficient ways that it works. The thing is that mathematics and life, the Venn diagram exists. There's a lot of overlap, but what am I trying to say here? Humanity is just as capable of not just like, nuking ourselves into the Stone Age, right? That everyone's got that. We're also capable of just sitting on our asses and being like, this is fine. And I know he wants us to be better, but most people don't have, I don't want to say the capacity. They don't have the drive to be better in that regard. They just want to sit down and not have a billion people, him included, tell him what they should be doing. I hope that
I'm thinking about what you said. I'm not like.
One day, I sat down and I listened to The Information by James Gleick. And I've listened to this book a couple of times. And there's this part where he's the guy responsible for the single largest private collection of books. It's something like 1,300 something books, which doesn't sound like a lot until you consider counting books by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Thousands of books, like 1,000 books. That's a lot of books for one person to own. And there's so many people vying for your attention that he said that people are just tired of having their attention grabbed and exhausted. And we have to get through this phase before we can move on to what Eric wants.
And I think his argument against that, like I said, I don't know. He's a very complex person. It's hard to.
Yeah.
It's hard. I even don't like making statements about people this smart because I feel like if you talk to them, they would be able to refine what you thought they meant in a better way.
Oh yeah.
I think, but given that I just listened to a lot of him, I think he would say, "Yeah, that's all great. We don't have the time."
Sucks to suck.
And that's kind of my point is that while people are tired of this stuff, and I get that, I have had a severe mental illness my whole life. I've been tired my whole goddamn life.
Yeah.
And so when people are said they just want to deal with shit, like, God, I get that. But at a certain point, fine. I think that it makes me sad, 'cause I think that I say our fate may be sealed either way then. We may just go out with a whimper then. If that's how it is and we have to...
I don't think we'll go out with a whimper. And I say this, weirdly enough, because of people like Eric and Brett, where they are far too smart and far too capable to let our ridiculous nonsense end at this point in history. There are enough people like them that humanity's fine. We don't have to worry about that. What we should be worrying is how we get there.
Interesting. I don't take that perspective as much. I don't know if we're going to be fine. Like, and I'm, like I said, this is coming from someone who wants humanity to go on. Mm-hmm. Given the state of, I'm so sorry. That was, I think you.
Yeah.
Given the state of where we're at with so many nuclear armed powers, the wars going on in the world, the people in charge of these powers, and the development of artificial intelligence, I think we're at the point, I think even Eric said this, is where people are not running for the exits yet, but like the countdown's happening. Once you have, and I think we're going to have this within the next couple of years, AI, like human general HGI, human general intelligence, or AI that can do basically everything a human can do, and it takes a ton of computing power to train it, but once it's trained, you can run it on your smartphone. I think people, like you said, going along their daily lives, like, what? I don't have to go to work. I just get a check. Like, say they do universal basic income. They get a check from the government. Like you said, I think that's fine for a bit. Then humans get bored. As someone who's had leisure time, you'll eventually get bored.
Like I said, we've got to go. You watched Full Metal Alchemist, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a price for everything. And if we want to be benevolent cosmic beings striding between stars, uplifting alien races, what's the price for that? Untold sacrifice.
Yeah, I do think
if we're going to get there, likely this is the beginning of, like, well, how do the powerful, incredible, like, how does the 1,000-year-old human, right, who descends to the planet wub wub wub,
yeah,
and like enlightens them and teaches them all of these things about, like, art and history and, like, how to construct moral arguments and all that, how does this human know all this? Because they watched humanity burn. And that's the price of getting there.
I think there's always going to be trials and tribulations, and I don't know, maybe I'm more of the view, maybe along the lines of Eric and Brett, of, yeah, people want to just be left alone. It's very complex and hard, and, you know, these are big, complex issues. Couple things. Number one, modern life it's complex in a lot of ways that the past hasn't had to deal with, but in terms of just comfort and general niceness of the whole situation, we have it unbelievably easy.
It's comfortably splintered across 1,000 things.
That's beautiful. And yeah, I guess sometimes people just want to be left alone. And I think there was a vision I had, I think it was when I was on LSD once, where I had like a vision, like, it's hard to explain, it's in a psychedelic, but I was like almost in a chimp body. And there were a bunch of other chimps, and we were just watching this like river of life float by. And a bunch of the other chimps would go off and they'd create things, and it was almost like a story of nuclear weapons. And
rise and fall of civilizations.
And I was like, why don't we just stare at the river? Why don't we just stare at the river? The river's so pretty. And yeah, the river's pretty. It's nice to just stare at it. But at the same time, you need that balance. You can't just stay there forever. Then things degenerate.
Yeah.
there needs to be a purpose of going on. And one of the things I find very interesting, and Eric touches on this as well, especially he's talking to, he has kids, so younger generations, talking about younger generations, I have plenty of friends who don't want kids, and that's totally normal. I get that. No shame against people who don't.
It's understandable.
And at the same time, there's arguments I've heard for people who don't want to have kids, and I can understand those. But there's some people, they're a pain. It's like, yeah, but they're also great in so many ways. And Eric said this, yeah, there's broken families, but they're still families. And if you want this or your, I don't want to say ideology, but your beliefs of whoever you love to live on, openness, you have to have kids. Because if you just don't have kids, your beliefs die with you.
Kids, or at least like descendants.
But, and people are like, well, it'll be other people. It's like, yeah, but at a certain point,
those other people aren't yours.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that maybe because I said I grew up in a big family, I did do a psychedelic trip that totally changed my mind and made me want to have kids. But when people, especially very, very young people, I'm like, what are you going to do? I could honestly probably not have kids. I do, you know me. I do jujitsu. I hike.
Oh, yeah. You have the same thing that I do, which is you are perfectly... This is why I say that, like, we need to... I think we're having a fly too close to the sun moment. So if we leave aside AI and all of its everything, right? Because that's not a can of worms. That's an entire factory of worm cans.
Coming from a dimensional hole of worm can factory makers.
Yeah. If we leave aside the actual
black hole that is.
Yeah. If we leave aside the wormhole, haha, pun intended, of AI, and we look over to something else, one of the decisions our species has been handed by ourselves is the question of descendants. And I think to piggyback on what you were talking about, it is easier than ever to live without kids now. You can feel fulfilled temporarily in sequence. Like, you have a sequence of temporary fulfillments in such numbers that you can successfully believe that you are fulfilled to the end of your life.
Yeah.
So the route of going with kids is no longer the primary path one has to walk along. There's now like 7 or 8 trails parallel to it. And one of the weighty issues is the question of is it now it's a very personal question. Like, it used to just be like, all right, have kids and do whatever, right? Have kids, and alongside that, you do whatever you're doing. Now we are faced as a society as a whole with the question of just like, kids? Question mark?
It is a new question. You're right. That's a good point, that it's never been in a point where it's...
Like, women have access to, on the whole, not entirely destructive birth control. There's a whole bunch of arguments about the level of safety and like what it does to the human body.
There's trade-offs.
Yeah, there's always the trade-offs. But they can now choose long term whether or not they even want to have kids.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. Like, you could, in theory, do some impressive things with your body as a woman, and there'd just be like no kids.
Yeah.
For guys, we can find fulfillment outside of serving like society in the most direct ways we used to. It used to be like breadwinner or like builder, right? Now we don't have to build for women or for children. We can build for anything.
Well,
anything.
I
dude.
think that's also the problem because you have too much. I'm all for freedom.
Yeah. Analysis paralysis, choice problem.
Exactly. And also, how many people are spending their time doing all those things, like doing truly amazing things? There's a lot of people like that. I know a lot of them. But how many people are just drinking more and smoking a lot more weed and watching movies and playing video games?
Feeling empty.
Well, because you know why? And this is where I do like Jordan Peterson's old school wisdom. I think what he said is true. It's very hard for anyone to become fully mature until they have kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
we're no exceptions to this.
Up until that point, no one truly matters more than you do, and that's what's happening. All the things people are not everything, but there's a lot of things people are doing. Those are very hedonistic things to do. Like, you're just going to live for your own self gratification? No wonder you're depressed.
Well, it's also like...
Not to say that kids should be like, oh, so have kids. I don't want people to make that jump. But I'm just saying that sometimes tradition and having kids, I mean, yeah, it's the old school thing. There's a lot of burdens with it. There is a lot of inherent meaning attached to that, which is hard to replace.
Question the tradition. Don't tear it down until you know why the fence is there.
And that's like I grew up. You grew up in a good family too. Mm-hmm. Family's great. Like, yeah, there's problems. Of course there are. If there isn't,
have you ever interacted with another living human?
Exactly. I love like going to see all my cousins and seeing kids. My sister's having a kid. Thanksgiving. Yeah, some people do have shit families, and that sucks. And at the same time, I don't know. I think we live in a time with and AI is just going to make this worse in some sense, where we can just the more, and like I said, I've done a lot of psychedelics, and this helped beat this into me because in a lot of psychedelic experiences I had, you'd go in these circles of just pleasure, and they kind of run out what it'd be like a life to just continue to do this. There's one, multiple times in psychedelic trips I've had it feel like I'm just eternally orgasming, and it's fucking torture.
Yeah. There's actually a woman who lives in a semi-permanent state of orgasm, and she's just like, I think about suicide a lot.
Well, I think there was a woman like this where they gave her a button to be able to just access orgasm instantly, and she begged them to take it away. Yeah. And then when they took it away, she was like fighting them to give it back.
Yeah. So here's the other dark side, because there's many dark sides. This is a polyhedron of dark sides.
This is explained in the later Dune novels. This is like Heretics of Dune and Chapter House going to.
Frank Herbert did a lot of drugs.
Well, the last two, he talked a lot about sex and these ideas of just self-perpetual ego filling.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, I was going to say, there's also another, like, there's a bleak... You know how you can get someone really selfless?
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to use Elon Musk as an example.
People aren't going to like that.
Tickle my nuts. You can get really intelligent people, right? Say what you want. Elon Musk is a fairly intelligent individual with a reasonably larger than average amount of money and resources and time. And people like him, Jeff Bezos, who's the Microsoft guy? I'm blanking.
Bill Gates?
Bill Gates. Like, you notice that at some point they all come around to like the same conclusions as just like Steve from accounting who's like, I'd like to start a family. Now Elon Musk is saying it, right? So you get all these things, but what about the guy who's just like permanently stag? All he does is he's like, I am the computer man. And he advances computation.
Dude, I'm all like I said, I don't want people think that I'm like, I don't want to lecture people. And when I'm having these conversations, I'm not judging. I'm trying to come to conclusions.
Yeah. So I would ask you. I'm not talking into the microphone.
Yeah, if you want to, I was gonna say like you want to talk like with the top, kind of talking in like kind of if we're
Just
yeah,
really deep thread it.
yeah.
So taking that route is now incredibly viable, and I would say more viable than it has been in the past. It is now more socially acceptable to do that, and it is also easier in terms of time and treasure. To simply like in their mind, very likely, because I know people like this, they see themselves as a servant of the people. So like that's another.
Well, it's a totally like I think I listened to a conversation with two feminists who very much disagreed on, I can't remember what issue it was, but neither of them wanted kids, and they both did things that were very beneficial to
society as a whole.
Yes, and contributed in their own ways, and that's why I'm not.
Yeah, and so
I guess I, like what you said is, sorry to just interrupt here.
No, go for it.
It's not to judge these new, like you said, these new modes of being that allow people to have these different paths, contribute in their own ways. I'm all for that. Just don't shit on the traditional ways, because there's a lot of good. I think so many people, and I remember like this, it was one of the first times I did a hero's journey on mushrooms. And I didn't want kids for the longest time because I taught kids. They were a pain. I remember it. But I did it, and I had visions of family, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. I think there's something deeply human about it, and it's an amazing thing. It's not for everybody, but it's so...
But it's for a lot of people.
And enough people need to do this, or we're going to die out. You have to have some level of contributing to the population.
Can I say something else that's going to piss a lot of people off?
What? Oh, yeah. Well, all our 95 bots, 95% bots.
Hello, Chinese bots.
Russians, and actually Portuguese.
Portuguese?
Yes. I don't know why.
I think it's your background. I think it's just because you come from, like, around there.
No, I don't. I don't, though.
It's because you're really attractive to the Portuguese.
No, I don't know.
Anyways, one of the silver linings for all of the gender nonsense that's been going on is, how do I phrase this? Like, I've got an idea and it's nebulous and I'm trying to turn it into words. The recent cultural upheaval in the West, alongside technological advancement, has allowed women as a group to unmoor themselves from nearly all the things that they have been historically attached to.
Exactly. I think the birth control pill is going to be one of the biggest and most impactful inventions in human history.
And as a result, they are going through the fuck around find out phase.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
Have you noticed in the last couple of years that a reasonably noticeable amount of them have gone, okay, I fucked around and I found out and I didn't like what I found out?
Exactly. I mean, I remember being on Hinge. Finish. Yeah, sorry.
So I heard someone a while ago say that women are the stewards of, I don't want to say civilization, but I think it was culture that they said. And right now, Western culture looks like... Have you ever seen what happens when you just break tempered glass? Like, you know, all those little like bits and pieces and fragments on the ground? Western culture to me right now is kind of like that. We've got bigger pieces and smaller pieces, but it's in absolute pieces because the general stewards of culture have been going through literally unprecedented and literally unimaginable fuck around find out.
Oh, exactly. With the what women are going through, it was so interesting to me. So I've been dating recently, and I've been using Hinge a lot. And, you know, there's questions on it like do or don't want kids. And one of the answers is like, I don't know yet. And it was very interesting to see like women who were in their late 20s going, I don't know yet. I'm like, and like not in, like I said, not to judge. Oh, well, you don't know now. You're supposed to know when you have kids. I'm not.
You should know when you're 5.
I'm not that. I don't even view myself as a conservative person. I'm not saying that at all. Do whatever you want. But to me, I think I find it fascinating because number one, it's not really fair. Men have a little more time. I don't think you have much more time, guys. You don't want to be an old guy and have a bunch of autistic kids, but you have more time, and so
yeah, you got into your 40s.
Really, I would. You
got,
really got like
you
if you get into the 40s,
40s,
you can do it into your 40s, but there's a lot of studies that show that like there's a lot of effects of being a much older guy as a parent.
Something microplastics, yada yada.
But it's fundamental because it's not like you can't. For women, there's a cutoff.
A hard cutoff.
Exactly, and while I think this fuck around and found out has allowed women to explore that, I think what it also has is, as we do this fuck around and find out phase, I think a lot of women are going to get to this phase where they realize, oh, maybe I do want kids. Like you said, they didn't find what they were looking for in this phase, and it's fucking too late. And that is going to be a really, really... It's partly why I'm talking about this, because that's a rough... When you realize, oh, I actually wanted kids, and I can't now.
Yeah, we are going to be literally unable to sympathize because that is a pain that we physiologically cannot understand.
Well, and even as a person,
yeah,
go on.
So I just want to interrupt.
Trying to let other people talk. Please interrupt me. I come from a family where my sister even interrupts more than we do, and I forget that. I'm like, I don't interrupt that much. Well, compared to my sister, who's unbelievably extroverted, yeah, I don't, but I still do it a lot.
So here's the silver lining, one might say, to that. The silver lining is that here is my assumption. I'm assuming that the women who do go, I would like kids, will probably have kids. I think that's a fair assumption.
Yeah.
It is not a large leap in logic. The women who find out that they want kids, but that cannot have them, are going to regret it. I don't think that is a very large leap in logic. Regretting a thing that you did not do is fairly common. Here's where my jump in logic takes a bit of a stretch. I'm assuming that over half of the women who do not have kids will come to realize that they did, or alternatively, that it will be less than half of them, but that the less than half will be quite vocal about regretting that they did not have children. And that the result will be a culture that has fucked around and has found out. And so you will have both the group that had kids and did not have kids both telling the generation below them have children.
That is a very interesting idea. I think the only issue is what happens when you have a generation that's so much bigger than the one below it. You have a number of issues. One, economically, how are you going to support all these old people? And number two, a smaller generation makes a smaller generation. That's one of the things you see. And yeah, it is such an interesting time, and I don't know there's a way out of it. I think it's gonna, like you said, we're gonna fuck around and find out.
Yeah, I think ultimately we'll plateau. We'll plateau somewhere where we're uncomfortable for a while, for like past our lifespans. I think is when the plateau will happen.
Yeah,
but my rough timeline of how I think it'll all pan out is we mess around and find out. The generation after us suffers consequences. The generation after them is still suffering consequences, but has, because it's usually 3 generations, isn't it?
I'm not like super. I read a book by Peter Zion who talked a little bit about stuff like this. So I wouldn't be the best person to ask on that.
This is absolute bro science.
This is all bro science. We're just kind of shooting the shit, trying to understand.
Anyways, we'll get to that 3rd generation. By that, I'll be long dead. You'll probably be long dead. And then they'll be like, wow, they fucked around. They learned the lesson. We've got the lesson and the resources, because assuming that they are clever enough to harness the resources around them, algorithms, AI, yada, yada. I keep a very default, like, humanity's going to be fine. Or humanity will survive. Whether or not we're happy and comfortable, that's the question.
I'm probably more, tilting towards humanity will survive. I'm not sure. I think I have more doubts than you do in a lot of real sense. Maybe I'm just, being a Debbie Downer here.
You also just have more interaction with the man-made horrors beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, I think I'm also being forced to deal with a mental illness. I realized that because I realized a lot of comedians in the scene also have, various mental illness. It's pretty common for people who tend to go towards things like comedy. And I didn't realize that how forefront it was. Like, I was dealing with it in a very big way, and so many people just don't. And understandably, it's very hard, and I had a ton of, like, backwards resources. But I think it's one of the reasons I do tend to, like, scream out about this type of stuff and, like, people like, he's crazy, he's getting paranoid. I think because I'm used to dealing with hardcore realities that you wish you could just, like, argue your way around or run away from, and you can't. You have to deal with them.
You can't argue. To quote a good friend of mine, I was in a chat room. I was in a chat room with a friend of mine, and there was a young woman there who was complaining about her period, and she's like in her early teens, I think it was. And
why are you talking in a chat room with women in their early teens?
Because I am in chat rooms with gamers, and I don't get to choose what kind of fucking lunatics I get to chat with.
This is weird. This is not me. This does not represent me or this podcast's views.
My online life is unhinged, and it makes me deeply uncomfortable every time. But it did make me laugh when I had this friend of mine who's in her 20s, and she was like, "You can't argue your way out of your period. Shut the fuck up." And seeing that text pop up on screen was one of the most hysterical moments I've ever witnessed.
It's one of the reasons, and this is to go back to the male-female thing we've talked about before, how women are just initiated by biology to some degree, and men aren't. Yeah. And a lot of those rituals, like you said in King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, where men would be initiated by culture, have gone away, or they've been demonized as toxically masculine.
And that's partially why I'm glad, or not glad. That's partially why I'm interested to see the direction that women of our generation and of future generations take culture. Because, like it or not, they're still stewards of culture. They still have the psychology and biology that facilitates that.
I think you need more. I think a mandatory military service or like a Peace Corps service doesn't have to be necessarily military. Would be for everybody would be great when you're like 18. You need
South Korea does it.
South Korea does it. Israel does it, and I think I got mine in doses. I think mine definitely psychedelics were like a big initiation for me.
We need an alien invasion to just make this all go away.
But you don't. You actually want to develop a system because the thing about alien invasion, most people die, and
no. We need alien invasion plus zombies.
I hate this. I hate this because people think that men. I would say people. I would say men think that this event's gonna happen. I'm gonna know what to do. I'm like, no, it's not. What's gonna happen is the zombie's gonna invade, and then it's gonna get cold because there's no electricity, and then you're gonna cry, and then you're gonna die.
That's why I'm being facetious. It's gonna be. I've been thinking about writing sort of like like a very small, very direct and to the point booklet for any future kids that I have. And if it's boys, I'd write one for boys. But if it's girls, it'd be a very simple, like, listen, pretty girls make guys dumb and ridiculous. Don't worry, it stays that way through your whole life. We're predictably ridiculous.
One thing I'll also say about like very pretty girls, sometimes one of the things I discovered learning how to talk to girls, sometimes also pretty girls are just pretty. Sometimes you're very pretty, but sometimes you're not very interesting.
Yeah.
Because you're just pretty.
No, I wish more people understood. I wish more people understood how much people just act. They just do a thing, and they don't know why, and no one around them knows why. They just do.
Like what?
Like, do you remember, let's say, like, 19, 20-year-old John?
Yes.
Right? So I want you to remember the headspace of that guy. And I want you to sit down, or not sit down. You're already sitting down. I want you to remember that guy and go through his memories and just remember that one impulse. He's walking down the street or whatever, and just like some attractive woman walks by, and he either straightened his posture or, I don't know, started walking up on a ledge or something.
Oh yeah, that's normal behavior.
And you only notice that after. Like, you only notice halfway up that ledge, or like as
I'm
your
not
posture.
diminishing the power pretty women have.
No. I'm just using that as an example. Like, you and I are fairly conscientious about that. Most people will just straighten their posture or get up there, and they'll go the rest of the day and they'll be like, why was I on the fucking ledge? Like, why did I take those stairs 3 at a time? What the fuck is wrong with me?
Well, did you ever see that walking speed? 2 women walking together have the slowest walking speed. If a man and woman walking together, the man slows his pace by I think 20% or something like that, like a percentage. But if it's 2 dudes walking together, they have the fastest walking speed because they're always trying to go faster than their normal walking speed.
Yeah. Like, and this does tie in to my whole thing about, like, I think humanity will live. Is like, we've got so many weird quirks, unconscious, oddly specific things that we do that it's too, at risk of sounding religious, it's too ridiculous to be natural.
Yeah,
and
I was
like, one of the contentious points I have with my roommate is he's very. We talked about this, I think, before off the podcast. He's very like, the Bible has been preserved by God, right? He's one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And my argument is, if God is supposed to represent, among other things, an ideal father figure, ideal father figures let their kids fuck around and find out. They don't let them kill themselves, right? Like, an ideal father figure won't let you jump face first into a bonfire, but he'll let you singe the hair off your arm.
Yeah, I think,
that's my religious argument, at least. Is like,
I'm not sure if that. I see what you mean.
yeah.
I'm not sure if it translates as perfectly as what you're trying to articulate.
Obviously not.
I mean, you have this. I mean, it's just a weird time now. Like, even like you said, we do have to fuck around and find out. We have to go through all the bullshit, and maybe I'm just a hard ass and am frustrated of all the like difficulties, and this is a huge portion of it I've had to go through, and so you project those onto other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just don't like weakness too, mainly because I don't like seeing it within myself, and I do see it within myself, and so when you see it in others, it's a reflection of you, and then you don't like that, and you speak out against it. And like you said, I didn't realize I was a passionate person because you don't when you're that type of person.
The Mesopotamians worshipped Inanna, and she was the goddess of fertility, passion, and war. And the fact that all three of those went together is not a coincidence.
No, it's not. I think sometimes I have to learn how to I love the idea of, say, from Avatar, but different types of astrology has this too, like different types of fire signs is like an abstract representation of someone's personality. Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And one of the things I remember talking to some people about mental illness is some people are like, I don't have your intensity. And yes,
passion.
I have to regulate that so I don't overwhelm people. And at the same time, my argument's like, how else do you survive a super tough disease like bipolar? I want to see other ways because I believe there is, but one of them is just like, you're going to get through this just with willpower and forcing your way through. And most people don't have to deal with that, thank God. But when you do, there is like a bias towards it. You're like, how else do you get through that?
I've actually been listening to Chris Williamson talk about that, and he's like, there's problems where, what does he call it? He says it's a type A people have a type B problem, and type B people have a type A problem. And the inclination is that if you are externally very successful but miserable, people tend to discredit you for being miserable much differently than they discredit the lazy bum who just needs to get off his ass and work. And so he says that we need a dopaminergic Goggins or something. I'll have to find the quote and send it to you, where he's like, it's like a relax harder than me.
Yeah, I've had to find, and I'm also just not a good person who's good at relaxing. And at the same time, the reason you have that fire is because when you're very depressed, and there's a lot of people luckily can get on SSRIs, and there's things they can take that will assist them. But there's not there's not treatments for true bipolar depression. And my question, and it just alienates people because they don't have to deal with it, is like, how do you get through it? Do you just be like, passion? When you're that depressed, that self that's like, it's nice, doesn't exist. You're just this empty void. You're literally nothing. You feel like you're at the bottom of this pit.
You are so aligned with the concept of emptiness that you could kill someone or create new life, and you would be like, oh, that's a mild, interesting thing. Anyways.
You're super erratic because you don't care at all, but at the same time, if things get spun up, you just go back into this whirlpool, and
it's a horseshoe.
The way I got out of it was just, you're gonna run. I don't want to run. You're gonna go run. Like, you're doing that every day, every morning. That's what you do.
I don't want to do it anyways.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that type of teaching doesn't work all the time, but when people have none of that, and that's not just Goggins. I mean, Jocko Willink is like that. I actually tilt people towards Jocko because I think he has that same intensity, but he's a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think he has better leadership qualities than Goggins, and it's not an insult to Goggins. I think Goggins just had such a fucked up life. He has a different type of niche than Jocko does.
Goggins reminds me of a scout or like a sniper.
Goggins is just persistence.
In, like, the archetype style. David Goggins is not a social person. What you do with people like that, in my understanding, if you're trying to move people into where they will be both useful and happy, is you say, all right, Mr. Goggins, I need you to go to this horrifyingly deadly place, and I need you to stay there for an amount of time that would kill most normal people 7 times over, and I need you to return and go, that was a mild inconvenience.
Except there was no voice who needed to say that except within himself, and that was the if you ever read his books, I think some people don't like to read his books, and this is it's not an invalid reason, is he makes you feel like the biggest bitch of all time if you read his life. And this is before he is a Navy SEAL. The difficulty that his life was so, and he talked about him and he had a brother who also went through the same shit. And his brother was a person who ran away and didn't deal with his problems. And Goggins from a young age was always a fighter. And I think I have more of that. Some people have this pull back and retreat, and I've had to try to understand, because I don't have that.
Fight
or freeze. And I tend to be a fighter.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do need to let things go. It's one, like you said, the type A, type B problem. I have to learn how to let things go. And it's sometimes you have to learn, like one of the things I do have, you need to be able to channel that to be able to integrate with a group. But I think the reason you need that passion is sometimes you do need to stand on your ideals, even if it hurts you. And if you've never done that.
Or especially when it hurts you.
Especially when it hurts you. It's one of the things why I felt like people who don't have fiery passions, especially men, are cut down a lot, because that can easily lead to obviously scary things that have happened in the past. Nazi Germany, those people, I think in our psychology, fiery men have that, like, oh no, what about this?
Yeah. Well, ironically, that's why you need the systems in place that they may try and usurp, which is to direct the majority of them into service, like service of themselves and others.
And
because for example, you could easily just with the social sphere you grew up in, along with the sphere you grew up in, the biology and psychology that you have, you could easily have been turned into a very, very scary person.
Oh yeah. Oh, entirely.
You could easily have been, to you borrow the terms that I am really getting tired of, you could have been radicalized.
I don't even think radicalize is the right word. I think you can just give into when you have a fiery nature like that.
You could have given into fine, you want me to be a monster? I'll show you a monster.
Exactly. It's a tilting into that. One of the ways I describe it, I've never wanted to be an actor, but I've always wanted to play the Joker. And one of the reasons I've done Heath Ledger impressions, and people don't like it because I think it scares them.
Yeah, because you can.
Because he nailed that. One of the things that when people do Joker a lot of the times is they try to be insane. You have to be insane. That's the thing. And a lot of things about insane people.
Most people.
The Joker actually makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You are trying to he is just chaos.
Yeah.
And when you lean into that and you have those eyes.
He's not malicious chaos either. He is just chaos.
Do you know why I have these scars? The way you get into it and those.
So serious.
Why so serious? The way you get into that, it scares people. But one of the reasons I love that is because you embody that manic energy. Heath Ledger embodied that manic energy so well. That's what it's like to be in. It's supposed to be scary, and it's supposed to scare you, not because you're obviously scared of what he's gonna do, but what's the real scary part is when you see yourself in his role.
That's why I was really. Do you remember when we watched the Joker movie?
Yes.
And and we got to the end, and everyone was like I think Liam and my brother and your brother were both like, that was something else. Why was he doing that? And you and I were both like, I can absolutely see every layer of insanity that guy was portraying in me.
No, I love when that movie came out. I hear the second one's just trash for so many reasons.
I heard that it's basically just like a court trial.
I hear the director also was like saying this movie was like not what he wanted it to be.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just corporate interference, which is shocking, I know.
I don't know. But the first one was great. And I think one of the reasons I saw a lot of people, and obviously it was an accurate portrayal. I understand why it scares people. I don't want to devalue how people felt about the movie. But one of the things were like, I can't understand why it did. Like, okay, watch the movie. Take away your political affiliations, what you personally think.
And tell me you've never fantasized about doing something absolutely horrific.
And a lot of people, especially I think women, tend to not have those fantasies as much. So I can totally understand why you would say, I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
As someone who's been in those positions when you've, been made fun of and just fucked over every way, people want to rationalize like he's doing this. No, he is literally just this is everything for those listening. It's just a middle finger. It's just a middle. Like as you're watching the city burn, you just have wide eyes like that's all I'm doing.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
What's that from?
Batman, dude. It's Alfred in Batman.
Oh yeah.
Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah. So I haven't seen those movies in a minute. So I'm sorry. And
yeah, just
you got to find a way. And I've had this happen too, where people in my life are like, you have to tone down the passion. You have to tone down the fire because it can get intense, and you can burn everyone, including yourself.
And tone down, I think tone down is the wrong. Tone down is the wrong set of verbs. You need to let it go. Like, because you can't seize it and push it down. That isn't how, for some people, that works temporarily. Like, in the moment, if you're absolutely blazing furious at someone and you are ready to rip them limb from limb with your teeth, you can seize that anger and you can hold it and push it down and make the rational decisions of like, okay, this is not a place that I need to be right now. I need to walk away, take some deep breaths, etc., etc. But you can't keep holding that down. You have to let it go.
Yeah, because it just builds up. And finding the proper way to let it go is important.
Yeah. And right now, we have a distinct lack of systems in place, whether it's institutional, religious, what have you. We have a distinct lack of those, especially for young men.
Well, and I talk a lot about men here, but one of the things I think that is really hard message for young men is men want to be a competent badass who's able to control their passions in a good way. Yes. And so many of them get confused because they come out and, and sometimes it is manifested in an appropriate way and they're told that's bad. And so they're confused. They're like, okay, I'm not supposed to have this part of myself. I'm not supposed to integrate it. And then I'm also supposed to get women. And this is the interesting thing.
I'm supposed to integrate it, but I'm not supposed to integrate it. But I'm not supposed to show it, but I am supposed to.
There was a great guy. His name is Dan Blitzerin, I think his name is. He's like a modern day Hugh Hefner, or was for a while. And he said something, I don't know if I agree with the entirety of his lifestyle choices. Seems like a decent guy, though.
Yeah, a reasonably nice dude.
And he said, don't listen to what women say about getting women. And I couldn't agree with that more. There's a few exceptions. There was a great woman on Christian Williamson who was great.
I think I know what you're talking about. I'm in the middle of that podcast.
She's great. But she's an exception because I would ask just female friends of mine about how to, just simple things, how to approach women, what to say. All their advice was it wasn't even bad. It just didn't work. Yeah. Nothing worked.
It's how to walk directly into the friend zone in an ideal situation where it all works. That's just how to walk into the friend zone. It's like
you have, and that's why men get confused because you tell them, oh, this passion is bad. And then they're like, oh, I'll just try to go be a nice guy. And you're then a nice guy. And they're like, I'm not getting women though. So what is this? And when I come out with this passion, women say that's bad. You have to find a way to harness that in a way that is attractive to women. I'm in the process of doing that now. I think everyone is to some degree. But it's one of the things that was so frustrating was one of the things I learned was joking with women. You have to have that. Otherwise, you're not attractive. If you're just a nice guy, you're just going to get friend zoned all the time.
If you're a nice guy, that's the same number of syllables as doormat.
And if you one of the things Dan Blitzer, this guy did say, is if you over communicate your interest, it's a huge thing I still do at some points. A lot of the time.
I'm guilty of this as well.
So it's like that yin and yang. You don't want to over communicate your interest, but you also don't want to just be this nice pushover. Learning how to be friends with women is one thing that's very important, and it's helped me in a lot of ways.
You have to walk the straight and narrow path, the knife's edge, the balance between chaos and order, like whichever two poles you're dealing with, you have to correctly modulate between them.
And that's the thing, because I think young men are told, well, I don't want to be this incel, far right crazy guy, but then I'm doing trying to be these nice things like women say they just want, and I'm not getting that. Like you said, you have to find a little bit of a balance. One of the things is teasing's a great way. Knowing, as bad as it is, and sometimes you do have to temper it, my passionate personality, it may push some people away, but that's also who I am.
Yeah.
And if you're trying too hard to be someone else, and I'm saying this to myself as much as anyone else, you're not going to be something that's unique. You have to be unique in some way, and that mean a lot of women may not like you. Most women won't. That's the case for most guys. But there's a lot of women out there.
The goal is to refine yourself into a better version of you than you were yesterday. And with enough refining, you can become unrecognizable. But it's still you.
Exactly.
Like you can go back and look at the absolute, like, my vocabulary lacks words with enough scathing contempt for middle school me. That I would not go back in time and change that experience, but that slug of a creature, that absolutely pitiful, mind-numbingly obtuse idiot, is vastly inferior to my current me. I needed to go through that, though.
Yo, you have to go through it. I think that's one of the things that men are facing, and video games, I think, are a huge issue with this. Because the thing about video games, I was thinking about this recently, they give you that adventure of life that your soul craves, but they have none of the consequences of the journey. And so you're like, what's going on? It's because when you do go on a journey of self-discovery in life, let's stay on the same subject of women. You're going to go up to a lot of women. You're going to get a rejection. You're going to have a lot of that failure. But what that's going to do is it's also going to teach you, okay, how do I then modify this best version of myself to present to women? What am I learning here? Yeah. And you're also going to get tougher because you face that. But if you just stay in a game, even a game that's hard, there's no physical consequences for you.
There are physical consequences. The physical consequences are you're going to become fat and unattractive. Or skinny and unattractive.
But I guess long term, I'm just saying maybe you trade these immediate. That's a good point. You trade these immediate consequences that help you have feedback and improve for a longer term parasite that slowly eats your soul.
You would absolutely love Dr. K.
You were telling me about him before the podcast.
Dr. K has a book called How to Raise a Healthy Gamer. The preface of the book is literally, he comes up and he's like, I had a gaming addiction so bad that I failed out of college. And it got to the point where my parents, it was so bad that I asked my parents for help. And I also went to India and became a monk. Like, bro literally went to India and be trained.
You don't have to preach me on video game addiction.
Yeah. And literally spent 7 years trying to become a monk. You want to know what the thing that he says that really hit me was? The monks there in India were like, they said, to become one of us, you need to give up your life and everything in it. You don't have anything to give up. go find something to give up and then come back and try and become a monk, and we'll see how you go. And so he went from there and became a psychiatrist, and now he has an entire, like, he streams on Twitch, he's got a YouTube channel, he's shown up on like so many wonderful podcasts, and he basically helps. If you had down spiraled and not gotten out of video games, he basically helps people like you specifically in that situation.
And I think I had to go, because I'm a type of person, and it's just, like you said, I'm a disagreeable person. And if you are, like, I really recommend people take understandmyself.com, Jordan Peterson's exam to understand themselves. If you are disagreeable, I was the type of person who needed to make my own mistakes. I am so glad I went through that addiction. Like, it was probably one of the best things that happened to me because I had to deal with it. And I mean, I love those adventures. It was part of who I was for so long, but overcoming that was so important. And then it was super interesting for me because by the time I got out of it, everyone was already in that. And it's one of the things, I've always been a very open, honest person. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how many people hid it. I hid mine too, to a degree, but it's a thing now that is, it will eat your life. And you do have to, they are so much fun. When I was a kid, I was like, why would I do anything else? It's like, because it will consume your life. And when you're not playing games, like, as soon as you touch the power button, you're having fun. As soon as it's off, immediately
you're only having fun for the first like hour or two, and then after that, you're not having fun, but you're playing it because, and I'm quoting Dr. K here, you're playing it because it suppresses your negative emotions.
Yeah, it's your escape.
It physiologically does that. What is it? Your amygdala? I think it's your amygdala.
Yeah.
It physiologically deactivates your amygdala when you're playing games. You are physically incapable of feeling negative emotions as powerfully.
Yeah, it's such a draw, and
it also, like, because he goes into it. I listen to the audiobook because I drive a lot for my job. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, here, it does that. It's also perfectly, like, video games are uniquely challenging in that they are meant to be overcome with struggle. So you can struggle and struggle and struggle, and then you will eventually succeed if you put in enough effort. That is not true in the rest of life. You can struggle, but if you just have a low IQ, you're not going to become Chevy Chase. You're just not.
Well, that's the immediate consequences. Is then you find out on your path, okay, if I can't do this, what can I do?
Yeah. So video games, they scratch that itch, right? They challenge you, and so you can enter flow states much more easily. You become dependent on that. What they also do is they can slow, or, like, I don't think he says stasis, but he describes it as like a slowing comparable to stasis, where you like, your brain stops developing. So, like, if you play video games throughout your teens, your brain can stop developing emotionally to the point where, like, let's say you start a heavy video game addiction at 15, you reach 25, you get off your video game addiction because some magical intervention happens. You still have the brain of a 15-year-old.
Dude, I want to continue this conversation. I have to pee so fucking bad.
Then pee.
I'm gonna pee, and we can pause it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll pause. We'll pee. We'll probably come back.
Yes.
Okay, we're back from peeing. Oh, you can't think when you're. It got to a point for about an hour where
your brain just shut down.
My brain was like shutting down, and then it got to a point over the course of like 30 seconds where it, at first it's just like 15, 20% of your brain shutting down, and then it was like 50, 75, and it was like, you have to pee now. You're gonna explode. So I thought I could hold it, but I couldn't.
I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard someone talking about how true pleasure in life, like true universal pleasure, is relieving a full bladder, or like a really good burp, or taking a really satisfying dump. Like, every human across the course of history has done that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care if you're Tutankhamun, Jesus, Michelangelo. Like, everyone has sat down and been like, oh, I needed to take that dump. Oh.
So what were some notes you said? Where were we? What were we even talking about? I don't even remember.
I don't know.
What were your notes, though? You said you had some notes you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I've got some notes. So I listened to the audiobook version of so C.S. Lewis, bit of background.
Mm-hmm.
C.S. Lewis was convinced to return to Christianity by Tolkien, right? That's the thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so at one point he writes this series of letters, I guess you would say. They're called the Screwtape Letters.
Mm-hmm.
And the preface is basically a higher demon in demon bureaucracy is sending letters to his nephew during World War II, I want to say, on how to corrupt the human soul. Whether or not you're religious, it is a very fascinating and very, very, very insightful thing to listen to or read.
And C.S. Lewis, what did they write?
He wrote The Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, that's what I was like. Yeah.
Yeah. So, whether or not you agree with his interpretation of demons or Christianity in general, it's still a fantastic read because it does give you some insights into like, oh, that's how that's not good for me. Like, it's
well, one of the things I've noticed is that as more traditional religions have been abandoned, there's just new ones that are created.
Yeah.
Like the religion of woke, it's a religion.
It is.
And the reason I was so put off by it is because I was raised Catholic, and I'm like, this reeks of stuff. And a lot of the people in those religions say, well, I'm an atheist. It's like, yeah, but
No, you're not.
Well,
you're an atheist.
even if you are an atheist, let's just say you're an atheist, you still have, this is religious-like stuff. It has excommunication. One of the things it doesn't have, though, is mercy. It has groupthink. You're either in the group, you're out of the group. It has doctrine you follow.
It's got holy texts.
Exactly. It has all the marks of a religion.
It has priests.
Exactly. It has everything. It's just under different names. It's the same thing, and people hate when you make this comparison.
Every 10 years, people reinvent Christianity. That's the joke, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I don't even like saying religion, I would say. I would say there's a religious, I can't remember who said this originally, but someone said everyone has a religious-shaped hole in their heart. And I think that's what happens when you don't have something. Like, that's why, I mean, I told you about how I do my thankfuls and have these ideas.
True atheists are shockingly rare.
I think even if they do, they tend to have practices that
reflect religious value.
Yes, they do. And even, I don't believe you can go through a true, like, psychedelic experience and say, I'm an atheist. If you can, the most you can come out of is, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Which is always, to be fair, a great place to start. Because you can ask so many stupid questions.
I used to be an atheist, and then I did a lot of mushrooms, and I'm like, okay.
I
don't know if I believe in the Christian God, but I definitely don't know what the fuck is going on.
I love Jordan Peterson's interpretation of God.
I do too. I like it a lot.
I find it so much more reasonable and understandable than whatever. I pick on my roommate a lot because I live with him, obviously, and he's a Christian. He's a classic, he's just classic Christian.
But he's pretty like doctrine for law Christian, which is not all Christians. Like doctrine it says it's God's word. It's God's word. Am I right?
Kinda. So this is the problem that I have with how Christianity exists in its current state is you really need kind of the opposite of Martin Luther's intervention right now, where Martin Luther's intervention was basically you're putting too much, as far as I understand. I'm going to butcher this to any Christians out there. Martin Luther's intervention was basically he wrote a bunch of complaints with the church and was like, your relationship with God sucks and is wrong. You don't need to do it through the church. That's the entire point of Christianity.
Yeah, it was a critique of the power that had corrupted the Catholic Church and popery and shit like that.
Yeah. And we kind of need the opposite of that right now if we want Christianity to return to something that I would even remotely consider respecting. Like,
yeah, people need to realize that you may have forsaken the old gods, let's just say, but you're going to find new ones. And usually new religions aren't anywhere near as good, and they don't provide direction. Like, that's the thing. Say what you will about Christianity, it does tend to provide direction for people.
Yeah.
One of the things about these new religions, like the religion of woke, it like doesn't provide any direction for like a lot of straight white guys.
The direction it provides is burn it to the ground.
That's not direction.
What is it?
What is it? What is
the world?
And it also, one of the things I was talking to, there's a comedian in the scene. His name is Ralph Great. He's been a long time comic. He's a very good comedian mentor in the scene, and he's a black guy talking, and he was talking to me about how, and I don't want to go into too much detail what he said, but he talked about how having a good mentality as a black guy. He doesn't say the N-word. He's kind of a gentleman, and he doesn't judge those who do, but he really doesn't let himself fall into a victim mentality. And I think that's one thing people, woke stuff tends to paint the world, and there's the oppressor and the oppressed, and
they're obsessed with power.
They're obsessed with power, and it's overly simplistic, and it doesn't. One of the things I don't like is I don't like people who remain victims, because I don't like that within myself. I've done that before. Obviously, all of us have. It doesn't go anywhere. It
drives a nail. You are driving a nail further and further into yourself until eventually you pierce your heart and die.
Because you'll stay there. It is a trap, because a lot of what that says is true. It does suck. It is unfair. People are treated misfairly. And if you let yourself feel that way, you're never going to escape it. You're never going to.
Well, I think part of my issue is eventually it just got to the point where it was like, life sucks. And I'm like, yes, and they were like, life sucks. It's like, yeah, and the sky is blue. It has been for as long as we've had an atmosphere. Do you have anything else to say?
I also, maybe because I'm just a huge history dork, people fucking have no idea how amazing we have it. People have no idea. Oh my God. Just 150 years ago, it was a different, cruel world.
Here's my thing. The fact that you have comfortable shoes.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things about how, in terms of if you don't want to be a victim, be grateful. Be grateful for the things you do have.
Yeah.
No matter what. I mean, it was what I think I talked about a little bit about this, but I listened to, it was just a video on Stoicism, and they mentioned Nelson Mandela, who was a true Stoic, didn't let himself be a victim. When he got out of jail, he could have persecuted the people who put him in prison, but he didn't. That is those things, if you let those things in, it's kind of what God said to Cain. Jordan Peterson says this all the time. You invited the spirit of resentment in to have its way with you.
Yeah.
And
my understanding somewhere over here is it's not wrong to feel those emotions. It's getting attached to them. It's your brain abiding in those emotions.
Yes, getting stuck.
Yeah. Like
unfettered mind shit.
And it goes both ways. Like, one of the ways that I conceptualize what most people would call God is in the Judeo-Christian sense, God is perfect. Right? In their minds, God is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Which means God is able to feel the perfect kind of pride in the creations of the world. And to me, that manifests as purely selfless pride. Like, I am happy for you doing a thing.
That's hard.
And it is so hard. And I've gone out of my way to try and cultivate that in myself.
Oh, you have to.
It hurts.
It's hard, especially when
And you have to, because we're, just to finish that up.
Oh, yeah,
because
so sorry.
we're mortal and human and fallible, you have to learn to relinquish that too.
Yeah, you do. And it's hard, like as a stand-up comic, comparing yourself to other comics who are on shows, it's so easy to just get fed up and jealous and I deserve this, I deserve that. And you have to just be happy for him and let it go. And it's so much easier said than done. You can do it once, and you have to keep on doing it, though.
You want to hear one thing that I found really interesting recently?
What?
I am fascinated by the concept of sins, right? Because we grew up in, like, I grew up next to you. You were raised Catholic.
Yeah.
I was raised pretty adjacent to Catholic. So I'm fascinated by the Christian concept of sins. And someone has there have been many points where I'm like, wow, that's a very interesting take. Like, gluttony is the only sin that can and will kill you. You cannot survive without some degree of gluttony, because if you are absolutely fastidious and do not engage at all, you'll die.
Mm-hmm.
Pride being basically like the progenitor of almost all sins, yada yada. Envy is the only sin that doesn't feel good. Wrath is amazing. Wrath feels awesome.
Oh, anger makes you feel powerful.
Sex for lust, duh. I don't think we need to explain that at all. Pride, obviously. Gluttony. You ever eaten like double cheeseburger with fries?
Thanksgiving, bro.
Yeah.
What else?
Sloth. Like just
that one's a little tough because the effects of sloth can feel like shit, and you can cultivate making sloth feel like shit.
But putting off things.
It's less one way. I see what you mean.
Yeah, putting off like all of your essays to play one more match.
Yeah,
putting off your homework to do one more match, like that feels amazing. But envy is the only one that just unilaterally doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't. It's interesting. I think it's so hard to be happy for people. It's like, fuck you. Why do you get that? I want that. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
I think that's actually one of the things that the religion of woke is grappling with, healthily or unhealthily, is the fact that envy doesn't feel good.
Well, the fact that also, I think one of the things is it is a very infantile religion, and not just in the sense that it's very young, but in the sense that it's very immature, because one of the things that it really has as a value is everyone having equal outcomes or equity. And that doesn't, that's the thing about what religions, as they're tested over time, come face to face with reality and rise and fall based on that confrontation. It's why, whatever you think about Christianity, it stayed around, which is important. Where one of the things Christianity does acknowledge is that not everyone's equal. Some people are born with super talent. Some people are born with Elon Musk level intelligence. Some people are born with Leonardo da Vinci level creativity, and it's not equal. And I think that's one thing people I started to realize that in college, and I think my background of being a competitive person helped, because what you can do, I actually use people don't be competitive. I'm like, no, actually be competitive. It's how you use it. Whenever I see someone doing good, I use that as fuel to inspire me to do better.
Another thing that under woke, the religion of woke, competitiveness is just unilaterally considered evil.
And it depends. It's
But it's not. Competitiveness is what got us the Wright brothers. It got us. Edison and Tesla were very competitive. Now we have the electrical grid and cell phones.
Well, and that's the thing about, you see people like Elon Musk, Tesla, Wright brothers. These were all very conscientious men, and conscientious people tend to be successful just because they tend to be. That's how their minds tend to work.
The unilateral condemnation of men for the despicable actions of a few sociopaths is
or
going to have consequences.
or the sins of other men. Like, to
Yeah.
condemn all a group of people because people who look like them did bad things doesn't make any sense. It's just undealt with wrath that you are inappropriately dealing with.
Yeah. And to be fair, I will take trying to deal with it in any form over just not dealing with it. Because simply not dealing with it that is what I think will, if anything, would cause humanity as a species to wither.
Well, and I think this is what happens. I mean, just get back to the religion of woke. I was kind of on it, I think, in my when I was 20, my first years at CU, but I was always interested in the ideas of having an equal playing field. So no matter who you are, I don't guarantee you're gonna get a great outcome, but I'm guaranteeing you're gonna have an equal playing field.
Everyone's going to be hit with the same baseball.
And I love that. It's just that part of competitive, and one of the things, I was a competitive person, and I almost always lost, especially in physical activities. I wasn't physically talented. But you can cultivate that and say, well, I can play all these games, and I may not win some, but I'll improve on each one. And yeah, there's going to be people. I went to a big school. I saw there are people who are just smarter than you, who are just better than you. There are people who are better than you, and it just sucks.
There's always a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish. And that doesn't mean it's not worth trying or your adventure can't be amazing. Yeah. It's also just one of the reasons I started to move away from woke, because I'm a hardworking person. And
you have to be slothful in order to get through in wokeness. And you have to be a weird kind of lazy, too. Like, you have to be actively lazy, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's also a thing of, whenever I thought about things, or say if I'm going through Instagram and I see some comedian I'm jealous of getting on a show, I have to remind myself, well, did you work hard? Did you do that? Well, maybe I didn't go to enough mics this week. Maybe I didn't work as hard as I should have. Did I do everything? The outcome's out of my control, but the effort I put in is. And yeah, sometimes even you work hard, you're not going to get it. And sometimes some people are built for working hard. Like, if you ever want to feel inadequate, listen to what Navy SEALs do. You will feel like the biggest bitch in the world.
Well, it's like I've been saying for years. Everyone wants Elon Musk's money. What they don't want is his workload.
It's insane.
The man sleeps 4 hours a night.
It's the issue with billionaires we have. It's like, okay, do you know how much you have to work to be a billionaire? Do you want to work that much?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I think there's not as many women billionaires. Why? Because
they're sane enough to not want to do that.
Yeah, I think they're, in a sense, I don't want to say, I want to say wiser to know, oh, I don't want this. Or the women who have done it, a lot of women who are in their 40s and 50s and kind of came up during this time.
Yeah.
If you ask them, they say, I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. I think it's funny. Well, no, not funny. Interesting, amusing. I don't know. There is something to be learned from the fact that these people that we say that we admire, like Elon Musk, he doesn't have the best social skills.
What? No.
He's not the most in shape of all individuals.
Nope.
He doesn't get outside much.
Nope.
His family life, not the best.
No.
He's got a lot of money. Doesn't have very much free time. And I pick on Elon because he's easy. He's an easy guy to make an example of because he's so open about it.
And I think it's also, I want to acknowledge one thing, though. There are a lot of unequal things in the world right now that you could level the playing field to make more equal.
Yes.
It's not, I'm not denying. There's challenges people come from. You and I are both very fortunate compared to so many people.
Yes.
The places we came from, the experiences we had given the upbringings we had.
Yeah.
And that's not to say there's not things we could do. It's just when you go after, it's why I think people's anger about these outcomes, when they go to billionaires, it's just an easy target. And yeah, there may be individual billionaires who spent their money irresponsibly. It's all that. But
Yeah.
Even if you get that one billionaire to do that one thing, it doesn't solve your problem.
No.
And also,
And the question also comes about, which is it a problem or is it just a symptom of a different thing?
well, that's the thing is you think, and this is an argument when people like just give people money. It's like, well, poor people's problem is not money. It's the ability to generate money.
I can give you an example of this that happened within the last year. Sony Entertainment spent $100 million or $1 billion, some horrifying amount of money that we'll never see in our lifetimes, right? They spent a shocking and appalling amount of money on a game called Concord. This was supposed to be their version of Helldivers, which I'm sure you don't even care about.
No.
Destiny or Overwatch, right? They wanted to put their finger in the game, and they spent a lot of money, even by video game standards. This was an incredibly large sum of money. And that game had a peak concurrent player count on Steam under 1,000.
That's insane.
They spent more money than the GDP of a small island nation for less than 1,000 people to play that game at once.
And your point is?
My point is, you can't just throw resources at a thing that you think is a problem.
Okay. I see where you're going with this.
Money isn't the answer.
Yeah, and that's a big
talent, hard work, and money, and drive,
and a goal. That's a big thing. I realized I've had a difficult last 4 years. You can take so many other people in the world who have more.
What?
Yeah, no. It's been tough. It's comparatively. That's why you don't compare things. It's not as tough as so many people. I'm not bitching, but I'm saying I've had a tough 4 years. But one of the things is in the last 4 years, I've gotten really into stand-up. I've really become who I was supposed to be. I've gotten into martial arts way more, hunting, outdoorsman, climbing mountains. I found all these things, and I realized that I'm pretty minimalist. I mean, I'm not entirely. I have the things I like, but I actually have a problem of throwing things away that I don't need. I should probably keep.
Here.
Because it's it's not, money's not going to make you happy. The road, if I became a comedian and you have to if I could make enough money to live off being a comedian, that would be amazing. That's all I want. I don't need a ton of money. Money's nice. Don't get me wrong. A lot of money, it's nice. But and I don't have it, so I guess I can't say. I don't know.
Money isn't a substitute for social interactions.
Well, also just meaning. One of the things that made me trust Elon is, you ever look at what he has and what he owns? It's nothing.
He owns a lot of things that are either really ethereal,
all his money. People
he owns a lot of companies.
But also, he made a point. He's I don't have Scrooge McDuck, a vase of money. If Tesla goes broke, so does he.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of people who hate Elon Musk right now forget that he almost single-handedly opened up the electrical vehicle market.
Oh yeah, and it's one of the things. You know why I think Elon is such an easy target. You know why? I think probably not a new thought, obviously, but. Elon is so I want to say this. He's not a great communicator, but for how smart he is, he's actually very good. Because there's people who are that smart who you can't even talk to. And you can talk to him, and he can have a conversation. He's kind of a little bit like you, a little autistic, so it's a little awkward.
Yeah.
But it's not. He can communicate.
Awkward and makes people uncomfortable, but well-meaning. Exactly.
That people can... When I heard that he just, self-taught aerospace, he's an expert at all these engineerings, you can't relate to that. Most people cannot fathom.
Again, how much time did he spend not sleeping or talking to other people?
Chris Williams says this all the time. Elon was on Lex Fridman, and he said, "My mind is a storm." Yeah, I'm sure you've heard that quote. They don't know, they don't understand. people can't relate to Elon because he's that smart, and that people that smart you can't relate to.
Yeah. Well, like,
and so when you can't relate to them, you can dump and you can attribute a lot of traits to them in a way that is hard to go after. And he's an eccentric person with a lot of money. I just like to think of, what would you do if you had all this money?
Oh, it's really funny to listen to. Again, I'm going to pick up my brother here, because it's really funny to listen to my brother talk about like how dare they hoard all this wealth, and then he will openly talk like in the same evening, sometimes in the same conversation, about like, yeah, if I had like Elon Musk levels of money, oh yeah, I would absolutely buy like 60 cars and like a gold-plated toilet. And I'm like, you are Scrooge McDuck. You know that,
even
right?
that going after billionaires,
do you hate?
I don't think Elon may have some things people don't like, but he adds value to the world. Everyone does. That's a good point. But compared to the billionaires who we don't know about, who just make money off stock trades, who are anonymous and influence the world in unforeseen ways.
Cough, cough, BlackRock.
Oh, entirely so. Those are more ethereal on purpose, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think those are, yeah, corporate power and greed is a big issue, and people with a lot of money it can be an issue as well. But I think it comes from a lot of, like you said, a place of envy of, well, they have all this wealth and I'm struggling to get by. And those are two different issues. You're fitting this solution of, oh, there's these people with all this money, I don't have any, into this one. Well, there's a disconnect.
It's Jordan Peterson's question. Do you love the poor, or do you just hate the rich?
And it's easy because anger makes you feel powerful, and I totally get it. I have
and
my
it
own
clouds your
frustrations.
judgment.
Oh yeah,
and it's like, it's an understandable line of logic, right? Very little amount of money here, very large amount of money over here. Take some from over there, put it over here. The scale gets a little tipped in the other direction. It's not difficult logic to follow.
And it's also just, I think I struggle with people going after Elon because of the value. He created things with value. Like, what have you done? What have I done? What is this podcast? Like, I don't believe I deserve money for this podcast. No one listens to it. People clearly don't find this helpful as much as I enjoy you being here.
Elon Musk started the electrical vehicle industry. You play video games in your parents'
We're going to have to title
basement.
this, Two Boys Just Suck Elon Off Hard.
This is just the bro science episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I have a little sympathy because of someone with a neurological disorder, and I like Elon Musk too. I like his 14-year-old attitude he has about things, that playfulness that's just, you're like, what the fuck sometimes.
There's this, I don't know if it's Victorian England or what. There's this image of like a quote-unquote adult, which is like a person who, neutral face, just like straight-faced, grim, like staring ahead, marching into the future. And that's what a lot of people think, like, adult man. And I disagree. Because my two favorite adult men, or two of my favorite adult men, are Elon Musk and Adam Savage. Adam Savage, like, I challenge anybody to watch Adam Savage do anything on Tested on his YouTube channel, which is Tested. Adam Savage has a YouTube channel called Tested, wherein he does a lot of things. And that man's passion for life is something I hope.
Is he the bald Mythbuster?
No.
Okay. Which one is he? Yeah, I can't.
Google it.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Anyways, he has such a love and passion for life, and just like thoroughly enjoys doing his job. I don't even know what his job is. I think it's like prop making for things, and like.
Okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He has a wonderful time with life, and he is very similar to Elon Musk in that sense of just like Elon Musk likes building things. Doesn't matter if it's like a vast corporate empire like Tesla or rockets. He's like, I want to go to Mars.
I want to build shit.
Yeah, I want to build stuff. I think it was on Chris Williamson. Was it? I think it was the Ben Shapiro episode, I want to say, where he was like, men do two things. We build things up or we tear things down.
Yeah.
And we can build rockets to Mars or we can tear down civilizations.
Or rockets to X fill in the blank country.
Yeah. And just like, there's a fundamental... I don't remember where I heard it. I don't even know the full quote. But I remember years and years ago, someone explained to me that the reason men and women have such a hard time understanding each other is because we're so similar. And that we're so similar that tiny bit of difference feels so much more alien.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I like that.
I'm going to attribute it to Jordan Peterson because I'm pretty sure it was him.
Well, even if it doesn't, I mean...
But, like, if you agree on 99 issues, the 100th issue is going to feel much more important than if you agree on one issue but disagree on another.
I mean, speaking of that, I remember I was just at a party last night with a bunch of comics, and this was... I was just chatting with a bunch of comics who weren't... I was talking about Joe Rogan because I didn't have a costume on, but I had a leather jacket, and people were like, what are you? I'm like, oh, I'm young Joe Rogan, just, like, riffing.
Yeah, just making a joke.
And...
Comics making jokes? What?
These comics were a little older than me, and so they were saying, I love Joe Rogan on Fear Factor, and I wasn't a fan of when he became a podcaster. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't, like, in a mood to try to challenge people, so... I was just listening to what they said, and I kind of wish I was I wasn't so fucked up, so I could have just tried to understand their position better. I don't need to change their mind. I just want to know how they think.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because just the way they were talking it wasn't all condemning. They obviously liked him on Fear Factor, and even this one woman said, he's good at bringing people out in conversation. I think they just didn't like how he'd taken some things politically.
Yeah.
And
which is totally reasonable, and I'm happy that they were articulate about it.
Exactly, and that's totally. It's why I didn't want to say anything because I knew I'm also obviously such a big fan, and it made me. It was like, oh, this is not just. There's parts of this like, I think there's a lot of Joe people agree with, and then there's that little finals part, the things he does, the people he has on that they just don't, and people struggle with that separation of complexity. People really like, I say the world's bipolar, I'm not, is they want in this category or this category. It's really hard for people to say, I really like all this, but then this last part, that's not for me. Especially when you have as much influence as someone like Joe Rogan.
Oh, yeah. When I was in high school, I'm sure I've told you this story. I'm 100% sure I've told you this story, but I'm going to tell the podcast anyways. When I was in high school, I had a Spanish teacher. I had a Spanish teacher, and she and I did not mesh. That's not to say she was a bad person, but this is the story of like the first time I truly went. This is the first time I truly went down a lane of thought and realized, oh, this is what maturity is. And it's okay to be self-conscious about maturity. So I had this Spanish class first thing in the morning. Teenagers. Not the most morning people of all individuals. For a variety of reasons that we won't go into. But I have and had insomnia, and waking up early in the morning sucked a bag of disappointing flaccid dicks covered in Vaseline.
When you're 14.
Yeah. No, I was like 16 at this point.
Okay,
16.
high school.
Yeah, high school. So I would get up, and this class was absolute torture, and I hated it. And this is the only class I've ever transferred out of. Because this teacher was awake and peppy and excited and passionate at 7:30 in the goddamn morning, and teenage me was not having it. But I distinctly remember that there was this one problem kid that I had in a couple of classes. Absolutely had ADHD unmedicated. Like strong ADHD but unmedicated. And one of her philosophies in teaching was, I'm going to drag you across the finish line whether or not you like it. And some people need that. And I just remember this kid who was an absolute troublemaker, and she would sit down after class and be like, all right, Austin, let's go over this shit. And like hold him after class. He'd be late for classes afterwards, and she'd be like, no, that was me. I was keeping him to the other teachers. And she was like, I'm going to make sure you get a goddamn A in my class, you dumb motherfucker. And I was like, I respect that. It doesn't vibe with me. This isn't my class. I'm not going to vibe with this teacher probably on any level for years. I didn't think I ever would. Maybe now I could get along with her professionally. But I was like, this woman has my deepest respect.
Yeah, there's people who were willing to take that time. I was the kid who, God, you said it was the only class you dropped out of. I mean, I was the kid, I just wouldn't, I needed teachers I could trust, and if I didn't trust you, you weren't going to be able to teach me. And there's kids like that. Luckily, most kids aren't as overtly willing to break the rules because they're stubborn, which is a good thing. I think I've always said I wanted to create a school for problem children because I think they have great things if you learn how to teach them right. And if you also understand that a lot of times kids that are disagreeable, a lot of times you can work with them. You just have to give them some trust. Like I saw through a lot of bullshit, and that's one thing they didn't like. And some bullshit's necessary. I can see why they didn't like that. But I remember in middle school, it's fucking middle school. And God, I dropped out of middle school because it was just so, I couldn't function. I couldn't function in there. And
a Western middle school is such a plethora of nonsense and garbage.
And I think that's why it was hard for me because I've always been a person who's very tilted towards the truth. And in middle school, you kind of have to hide the truth because the truth is just ugly because you like physically usually are.
You're trying to ease hormonal preteens into. See, this is why again, I have mixed feelings about population increase and decrease. Because on the one hand, it's like, yeah, you need a stable population in order to maintain itself. You need an increasing population in order to grow. But for example, what we have now is a population too large for the education system in its current form to handle.
Yeah.
You have 35 kids in a class taught by one individual. They're not going to be able to cater to every student's need. Well, and they try so hard.
And that's not how people are meant to learn. A fucking sit in a desk.
Especially boys.
Especially boys.
Our education system in America is so impressively geared that it is one of the few things that I could accept. So if someone was like, yeah, it's a conspiracy to make people dumber, I would believe it. Because it is almost perfectly the opposite of how humans learn.
And if you get a disagreeable boy, he's not going to go along. He's going to point out things. That was one of the things I've learned just as a person. I'm a very cutting person. That does not jive with so many people. And I've just had to accept that, learn how to modify it, but also learn.
You want to carve away the bullshit.
Some people don't like that, though. Like, I think I know there's some people who I genuinely like, who I try to not be around it so much because I know that just my energy and the way I go at things, they don't like. They clash. And sometimes that's just the way things are, and you just have to accept it. Try to learn when you can integrate inside, and also know when this is not working. We're not integrating well here, and I mean, one of the things people say they're tilted towards truth, and so many people aren't, because if you were, you'd run into way more obstacles like I do. And I think it was one of the things. I'm a very person who tends to get. I'm a pretty fair person. I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty fair.
You aim to be fair.
I aim to be fair, and the world's just. It's why comedy's been good for me, because comedy, especially early on, is not. It's show business. Of course, it's not always fair, and that was good for me to navigate, because I try to be on. Like when I suck, it's like, oh, this sucked. This didn't suck. I did okay here. Trying to be as objective as possible. And
it's what makes on the one hand, it makes you very disagreeable to some people. Like if you say you suck, it's pretty unambivalent what you think. But the flip side of that is it makes your compliments far more genuine.
Oh, exactly. Like one of the things I won't do, I remember there was a girl, I think I've told this before, who I was at a open mic, and she's new and she's kind of cute, so asked if I watched her set. I watched her set, and I have a thing where if I don't think something's funny, I'm not going to laugh, and I'm not going to tell someone they're funny if I don't think they're funny. I'll try to, and I tried. That said, I didn't say she wasn't funny. I said, what do you think of my jokes? So I told her what I thought. I said, hey, I liked this one. I think if you edited, change this up, it would be better. But I could tell she wanted me to just be kind of almost like a supportive boyfriend, because everyone
wants support.
It was funny. As a comedian, I think the word funny, when people say I'm funny, you'll never see a comedian tell you they're funny, because they're around it all the time. So you usually don't say it, because you're usually around people who are just way funnier than you.
You're more likely to hear a comedian say, I'm entertaining.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm funny at times, but because you have a good comparison. If you're hanging out with the strongest, like all the strong men in the world, you're not going to be like, I'm strong, bro. You're like, well, yeah, you may be in most rooms, but in this room?
Yeah, you might be strong, but you can't, deadlift 500 pounds.
And funny is also an ethereal thing where comedians have worked on it in stage show. It's a little kind of biased towards the community as well. But when I say someone's funny, people are like, oh, he thought, yeah, because I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna give you. I can white lie sometimes, just be polite. But with certain things, like with funny, to me, that's like a genuine response. I can't. I've been to too many open mics to force a laughter.
I think it's interesting that you get two people. There's a lot of people who are very jaded right now.
Oh, yeah.
Weirdly enough. You get a lot of people who are very jaded, and their response is lying. And my response was lying for a while, and then I went, man, I can't tell when I'm lying anymore.
I tried to lie when I was in high school, and I thought I was so bad at this. And why? One of the things I thought, it was why it was so hard for me to develop confidence for years, because like you said earlier, I forgot to comment on it, is because I was so addicted to video games, my development didn't start till my 20s.
Oh, yeah. I'm in a similar boat. Not the same, but similar. We're both in sailboats or rowboats or whatever.
Going through it, figuring it out. And fuck, what were we talking about? I'm not even high. God damn it. It's been a while.
It's been a long week for both of us. We were talking about the genuineness of compliments and being funny.
Oh,
and how you had to develop confidence.
One of the reasons it took me so long to develop confidence is because, to me, confidence, you had to generate evidence. It's like, why am I confident? Well, I'm confident. Why?
That moment when you realize, wait,
some people
just
can fake it till they make it.
Yeah.
Some people are great at that.
Some people will just say the wildest things.
And sometimes you do have to just fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But I was someone who needed evidence of I've done this stuff with comedy. My podcast isn't big, but I've done this many podcasts.
I think it's Joe Rogan, actually, who said, you build confidence like layers of paint.
Stand-up. He was talking about, getting better at stand-up is like building a mountain one layer of paint at a time.
It's the same for confidence.
It is. You do need fake it till you make it, but I say you need to make a baseline of generating evidence that makes you confident. And I think it's one of the things that makes me fun. Like, some people in the scene will learn how to roast because I'm so forward with my issues. I know where they are. Like, I know what I do wrong. That's how I'm very self-aware.
Yeah.
Some people, I think, they do more a different route. It's not better or worse, where they do fake it till they make it. And I think whenever you're dealing, and I found this out in dating a lot, whenever you're dealing with your issues, like as personally as I do, and I'm not saying this is always the case, it's like a mirror to other people. Because they see you see your shit, and when you see someone seeing their shit, that makes you be like, oh, I got this little thing I'm not looking at. And I never wanted that thing. So it took me a long time to build confidence. But now I even am just in the last year have started to feel more confident. I don't want to say I'm a super confident person, but
above
I'm getting
zero
there.
Confidence.
Because I'm like, okay, I can do this. I have this evidence of mountain climbing, of jiu-jitsu, of martial arts, of stand-up. I've built this, and
not to mention all your academic
stuff. And I've done these things, and those I guess I'm just a truth-tilted person for so many reasons, and you have to respect when people aren't, and you also don't want to get so tilted towards truth you can't have playful imagination, and so there's this balance. But to me, I think it's how you know your shit. You got to know where you are. If you don't know where you are, how are you going to get better? Like, I try to listen, like I was telling him when we started this podcast. I was really embarrassed of my last podcast I did with Jacob Humphreys. I think I've done a better job today. I'm not perfect.
Who is?
I do talk a lot. I do have an extroverted, assertive personality, so I do tend to can dominate conversations.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go.
Which is that because you're such a passionate man, you're such a I would say you're one of the best people who are, as an example, of someone who can talk and think at the same time, and then use the talking as a way to think on top of that.
It's like a form of journaling.
Yeah. And one of the things that taught me by necessity is, as your friend for how many decades now?
So just, you're 27, right? Subtract 4 from your current age, and that's how long we've known each other.
24 years?
20, because you're 27.
Yes.
So 23.
23 years?
Yes, 23. Because we've known each other since I was 3, and I'm 26.
How have we not killed each other?
I don't know. Some people just click, you know? And this is...
Anyways, just to give you your compliment.
Oh, thank you.
Sometimes you have such deep thought that my brain is like, you need to fucking shut your dumbass mouth and listen, Caelin. Just like listen to him for 5 minutes, and I'm gonna sit down and shut my stupid mouth and listen.
Dude, that's what I'm telling myself with you, because sometimes I hear what you're saying, and it reflects what I'm saying in a different way, and that allows me to summarize or expand upon current conversations. Also, we've just known each other for so long. These are like, this is easy with us. We can just keep talking.
We're just sucking off Elon Musk at each other.
Oh yeah. Come on, Elon. Come on here. What else are you doing? You know, no one will see it. You can do whatever you want.
I have another thing and then you can get to your notes if you wanted to talk about something.
Oh, I just had those in case I thought of things.
So I have another thing, which comes from Mr. Williamson's podcast, which was curate your own space. Use the ban and block features, which, again, the religion of woke has forgotten that you can do that for some reason.
Or just have a very unsuccessful podcast and just don't have enough people to listen to hate on it, so you don't even have to.
You're really hung up on this, aren't you?
I have been, because as I've started to put more effort into it, you're like, oh, I've done this for 3 years, and it's not – this is a comparison thing, like I said, struggling with it, of like, okay, trying to do this to figure it out, because – you know, you think by 3 years you'd have a consistent audience, and you just don't. So I'm trying to be.
Well, are you doing this for someone else, or are you doing this for you?
I'm doing it for me, but it's also.
There you go.
Exactly. But at the same time, then you have to balance it out with, okay, how do I make this better? Because I do want to make this something that other people want to watch.
Yeah. This is a genuinely constructive hobby for you.
Yes. And so you have to. I have always been the person just put shit out there. And, well, you know, maybe listen to it. See how you can get better. And, I don't know, like, sometimes you're right. Maybe this self-deprecation is not a great way. And like you said, I think a lot when I talk. You know, taught me how to do that? It's Jordan Peterson. Ever listen to him lecture? He does this thing, and he'll be like,
Yeah, he'll do the thing where he like looks up and he's like, where he's like looking for the thought in the world. It's like, can he see into like the infrared spectrum or something? The man is a robot who's just like sent back in time, Terminator style. Anyways, to build on what I said before, you don't tell other people that they are responsible for mowing your own lawn. So why are they responsible for how you feel?
Oh, it's so true. Because they're not. How you feel. I do this because it's fun to talk to people. But, I mean, in looking at it in a constructive way, you said building things. Because building things, I think all men like to build things. But building things is when you're an engineer, it's a little easier to have a concrete thing. And when you're building a podcast, it's different. And also, how do you develop something unique when it's not unique anymore? How do you not become your heroes who you want to be like, but you become your own? And then you deal with all those different types of frustrations. And I think part of the reason I let these negative feelings out is to know they're there. Like,
yeah,
is to say, okay, I feel like this. I don't want to feel like this, so I'm letting me know that those come up, so I'm not just pushing them down.
I'm acknowledging these emotions that I have, and I'm looking at them, even if I'm not dealing with them directly in the moment.
Well, and emotions aren't like a thing where you're like, okay, I dealt this task, like I filed my taxes. It's
no,
done. It's like
they're still there.
They keep coming up. And, I mean, this has been... Technically, this is like what I'm on episode 55, but I deleted like 140 episodes.
Please tell me you have them archived at least.
No, not all of them.
Damn you.
Do I have all of them?
You've got to have some of them archived. Like, you've got to have the roughest early ones where you're like, man, I have improved.
I can't even remember. I do. I probably should. See, I delete too many things.
This is just like the baby version of you chucking that drive out the window.
Oh, that was me. That was me on a manic episode.
Yeah, like the baby version.
Yeah, it was. I think it was mainly a storage issue, but it doesn't matter. I got rid of them mainly just because so many of them were. I did want to portray a degree of professionalism, like I'm trying on this podcast.
Yeah,
and then I thought, like, you delete all of them, and then you start doing episodes, and they may have a little bit more effort, but they're not colossally better. You're like, crap, I can't re-delete all these again.
Yeah, I've discovered. I realized recently why my parents, especially my mom, like, when you go into that one, like, it's a closet or a storage room or some above a closet or like under the bed or wherever, some wardrobe, and you're like, Mom, why do you have my third grade fucking paper on, like, I don't know, like it is some like math test or something. Like, why do you have my Spanish essay from when I was 10, right? And then, like, I realized only recently, because I had to move a bunch of stuff out of my parents' house, and I was going through and I was like, okay, my mom didn't keep everything, but she was a pack rat. She liked to keep all the stuff her kids made. But I was like, oh, man, my handwriting used to be so bad.
Everyone's used to be so bad. Mine still is so bad, dude. You don't want to see this journal.
Look at this.
Oh, you don't got shit on me, dude. Try to read that.
That is something that I find amusing. Is like, have you ever noticed men's handwriting is just worse than women's in general?
Oh, God. Yeah, I know. I see women write. I'm like, fuck you and your legible handwriting. And I try to make it legible, and it's still shit.
Yeah, you're like, I'm sitting over here, like, squiggling, and you're over there like, yeah, let me just write a few quick notes with no thought, and then it's like this beautiful cursive, like,
I can do good cursive. Like, if I spend my time, I can make things pretty, but
yeah, you spend 5 minutes writing the word orange or something, and they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna finish this up real quick. How is that all legible? Anyways, I was looking through and I was like, oh, this is why she kept it, because she's like, oh, I remember when he was this small and this bad at things and this good at this one thing, and then he's like this big and he was this bad at this thing and this good at this other thing, and I was like, oh, I get it. suddenly understood. Like, I pulled out a journal from when I was like, because I've journaled on and off since I was like 10. Journal, I say. I'd write like 6 pages and then be done for 5 years. And I pulled it out and I was like, oh shit. I've come a long way.
Yeah, it's easy. One of the things I noticed that when you start to like try to be better is the first thing you try to do is erase who you used to be.
It's really hard not to do that.
Dude, it's so hard not to. Like, I mean, literally, I did that in some sense.
You've tried that many times.
Yeah, you're just... You want to get to that perfect state. But the problem is...
That state doesn't exist.
It doesn't. What is the finish line? What is the goal? Is it just to be... I would say if I had a podcast, it was instantly popular, then it'd be like, okay, what?
Yeah, well, what do you do? Congratulations, you're at the level of Joe Rogan in 5 minutes. Where are you aiming next?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why you just got to go. You got to accept the good with the bad.
Enjoy the struggle.
Enjoy the struggle. Enjoy those versions. Because you're going to look back at the version of yourself and be thankful you were that version.
Hey, Stormlight Archive fans, journey before destination.
Yeah, God. Have you read I want to, and we'll have to wrap this up because we've been going for, God, what?
No, let's keep going. I've got more notes. I've got so many more notes.
I do want to start because the files start to get too fucking big to fucking stitch together.
Okay.
And oh God, how did I want to wrap this up?
Well, I want to.
Okay, I'll let you.
I'll slap you with something real fun. Kings show up when bureaucracy feels impotent.
That's you said an interesting. You said kings are easy to follow because you can put a face with the name.
You can put a face on power.
Face on power. Issue I have with that is how kings are selected, and are they competent? Because those are.
So my counterpoint to that is, do you remember the 2016 elections?
Yes.
Of course you do. Do you remember one of the reasons why Trump was so popular?
Why?
People were tired of the same bureaucratic, stale bullshit. It's still one of the reasons he's popular. Is because people were like, they were looking at the systems in place, and they were like, we have tried these systems. We have written to our governors. We have written to our senators. We've done everything within our power, within reason, to get these people to address the issues that we find important, and nothing has changed. Or nothing has caused an impact that we feel is worthy of calling change. Because, correlation between actual change and emotional measurement is a whole thing. Anyways, the point is, they elected Trump because they just wanted to see something fucking happen. Even if it was just burning the entire thing to the ground, they were like, anything is better than the rotting carcass that we are trying to appeal to right now. And that's how you get a lot of kings.
Well, I think kings wouldn't work now.
I think they would work surprisingly well. Maybe not as named as kings and not in the exact same capacity. But look, a single leader who manages the direction of an entire powerful body,
but it's so much
with extreme political and economic influence.
But that's also a single point for corruption.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that it shows up when it feels like all of the systems in place are impotent or useless.
I don't even like the word king. I mean, maybe it's why when Rome went from republic to an empire, they would use the term imperator or emperor. Yeah, maybe.
It's the same.
I see your point. I'm just. It always depends on the king, because the best king I absolutely want to follow, but how they pass on is such a important, tough issue that I don't think it's worth it as much, because they also
Depends on how you measure it.
I'm not a big person to be told what to do, because I'm the king is, well, I'm the king. I'm like, that's not an argument. It's an argument word of what
Yeah.
the king means. Like, they're the king. It's like, so like power like as Varys says in Game of Thrones, power lies where people believe it resides.
So I haven't read as much of the Dune series as you have. But I would point out that the only reason, or one of the only reasons, that Paul is able to pull off some of the stunts that he does is because there was a decent chunk of the population in the Dune universe who were like, the Emperor sucks, and I am unhappy with how he does things, and I will join Paul simply for the sake of something different happening. Even if I have to lie to myself or believe that he is going to change it, it doesn't matter. As long as the person who has as long as the individual or individuals who have continued to deny me feel as impotent as I do. Like, Paul was a king.
Oh yeah, I'm not arguing that. Well, and
they are a necessary evil, like I said. Like, the thing with kings is they break up a stale bureaucracy, and that kingship eventually rots away, usually quicker, because individuals are more susceptible than systems.
Yeah.
And then in response to a corrupt individual, you have someone raise up a system that is more resilient than an individual.
I think I don't like kings as much because I think they get into the realm of messiahs, of someone who's going to come and fix everything. And I think that the responsibility of making the world a better place falls on everybody. And if I'm going to kneel to a king, I want to know because I think they're worthy, not because, well, everyone else says they're the king. It's like, well, eat my dick, dude. Like, what did you do?
Tickle my nuts.
Yeah. And like I said, disagreeable person, not a huge... I think kings are dumb, especially when they pass on. Like, current kings now, because most kings throughout the world are just based on name. And you are having power based because your father had power. Like, say what you will about Paul. Paul was also like one of the... Frank Herbert wrote him as a supremely competent human. And say what you will about Paul, or it's an even greater case, Leto. Because Leto's that better argument. Because Leto was supremely competent. And that's all of God Emperor. I think it's why so many people don't like God Emperor. Because it's confusing. It challenges your ideas of how things work.
God Emperor is the ultimate Gary Stu argument of like, well, what if he was immortal and psychic and invincible? Like, he has the, like, when you're a kid and you're like, well, I have a shield that blocks everything. Well, I have a sword that breaks through the shields that block everything. He is the logical conclusion of that argument, which is, what if he could just do it all as an individual? He just controls the entire thing.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe kings are the way. Well, Caelin, this has been fun.
Kings are not the permanent way.
He wants his king fix. But anyway, thank you guys, everybody. See ya.
Thank you.
Till next time.